council meeting. If you would, we're gonna stand for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As you call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Here.
Ms. Cole? Mr. Key?
Here.
Mr. Pollock?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
All right, we're gonna move right into our agenda. And the first item that we have today is the lot split on 30th Street. Mario, if you would, as normal or usual, just give us a brief before we open the public hearing.
Mayor, this is one of those 100-foot wide lots that's being asked to split into two 50-foot lots. It was brought before the planning board and it was tonight.
All right, we're gonna open the public hearing for those that may be here to speak on the lot split request at 111 30th Street. Good morning, Lance.
Morning. Lance Watson, Southeastern Consulting Engineers. I've got a couple of printouts I want to hand out to y'all. I've only got three, but they're in the packet too. So this is 111 30th Street proposed lot split. This is one that was brought to the council with a little bit different layout prior to, and there were some concerns based on the parking and the crowding the beach or overbuilding on the beach were the concerns. I'll let you One of the major concerns on the last time was that we proposed a 10-foot access easement from the outside lot to the inside lot based on the 33rd Street and Floyd lots that we're doing. That was the idea. We were going to do something similar. But understandably, there was parking concerns and accessibility concerns with a 10-foot easement. So that proposed easement has been increased to 18 feet, moving the houses seaward a little bit. And what is proposed here are two 33-foot, or what this lot split would allow would be for two 33-foot wide houses. And then there's a second printout of a big footprint, and the reason for this printout is to try to at least address or give some insight on the second concern last time, which was the footprint, the actual frontage and the view of the beach from the landlord's properties and the beach crowding, which was a concern last time. The second printout, which is over 81 foot wide by 71.9, so 80 by 81 foot footprint, is what is allowed right now on this single lot as it sits without any council approval, just a building permit. And I just wanted, the only reason I'm bringing that up is just because I wanted to show that the concern for the crowd on the beach has been, the footprint will be minimized with this lot split, and also 15-foot space between the two proposed residences. All the Mexico Beach Land Development Code regulations have been met, densities met, setbacks have met, impervious area will be met. So all the Land Development Code requirements for Mexico Beach are met in this proposed layout.
Okay. Thank you, Lance. Is there anyone else here to speak during the public hearing? Yes. Okay, the vote was 5-0 to recommend disapproval by the Planning and Zoning Board, and we will admit that the 18-foot easement does solve the parking problem. However, our initial problem, haven't been able to resolve it. It's basically that splitting the lot would violate section 1 of the city's intent in the comp plan, and I quote, "City's intent is to maintain city traditional town development pattern and historical appearance of its architecture." If you look at the current Gulf front lots in that area, the area between 25th and 35th Street are all 100-foot lots. And then if you go from 36th Street all the way down to the canal, they're again all 100-foot lots with the exception of those areas that have been declared the new townhome district and lots that were split prior to the hurricane. So what we're looking at is trying to maintain those 100-foot lots in that area, and splitting those would tear it up. And in addition to that, if the lot is split, there's a tendency to violate subsection B and E of the comp plan's intent, which is there's potential for lowering the value of the neighboring homes by splitting the lot, and if these lot splits continue, that will encourage congestion and overcrowding. Thank you.
Others for the public hearing? Anyone else to speak on the lot split at 111 30th Street? Yeah, come on.
I just want to mention that in that same area for most of the roads that you talked about, this has been approved 3 times exact. Well, not the exact, it was a 10-foot access rather than 18, but the same lot split with a more intensive layout has been approved three times, resulting in 6 50-foot wide lots in that same span of road that you spoke of. The Corey lots and the 33rd Street lot, the Corey lot had two of these, there were 2 100-foot lots, now there are 4 50-foot lots, and 33rd Street went from a 100-foot lot to 2 50-foot lots.
Okay, anybody else to speak as far as the public hearing? Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing and council, open the discussion. As Lance said, this is one that had come to us before. Is there any comments or questions of these people, of the presentation?
I'd like to ask the difference in what they proposed last time that we denied and what they proposed this time, Mr. Bush, if the first one would have kept the 100-foot lot, correct? 70 foot or whatever it is.
Well, it's a 100-foot lot, and your denial is based on that it varies from the neighboring lot sizes, and that the easement of only 10 feet would have created a parking problem because there's not enough room to back a boat or park a boat or any of that in there.
But
That's solved by the 18-foot easement. But we
Okay.
still have the issue with splitting the lot.
okay, so if they did that same size building and increased the amount of parking and stuff, how would that work with you guys, you think?
Well, it still wouldn't work with us because it changes every Gulf front lot in the area. It's an anomaly in the rest of the lots in the area, which would make 50-foot lots instead of all the neighboring lots, with the exception of one Lance mentioned on 33rd, being 100-foot lots.
So this lot would be, what would this lot end up
50
being?
feet, 2 50-foot wide lots.
But
And if we allow that to continue in the future,
I'm talking about the old one, not the new one.
the old one was, well, it's a 100-foot lot. I don't understand why.
Well, so this is a duplex, it's attached, so, but it's,
Oh, that's just what could be built, that's what the zoning allows without council approval, that big footprint could be built
okay.
just based on.
And we denied that one?
No, sir,
Oh, okay,
that
so,
was just to
so
show.
if we deny this one, then you could still build that one.
You know, the council wouldn't have, the planning and zoning board wouldn't have a problem with duplex. We just want to retain the 100-foot beachfront.
Okay, now it's clear to me, thank you.
Anybody else?
What was there to start with?
Sir,
What was there to start with?
I don't know that there was anything there.
I think there's
Yes, sir, there may have been something there prior.
It is a slab, I believe.
I'm not sure exactly what they're.
Isn't that Gerald Helton's? Isn't that Gerald Helton's old house?
That was in there's been some death in the family, and
Yeah.
it's passed down.
It was a
to,
single family house.
Children, but yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Okay.
Single family house. And this is being handled, it's now in an estate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was a single family house. All right, anybody else? Mr. Bush, did I hear correctly that the denial of the zoning board was unanimous? Did I hear that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, either discussion?
Why was it denied by the planning and zoning?
It doesn't meet the requirements of the comp plan because we put 2 50-foot lots in the middle of almost a mile stretch of 100-foot lots. And had the tendency also that more lots were continual along that line, then you had the potential for overcrowding and congestion, and it may lower the value of the neighbor's lots.
It has been done 3 times already.
I like the idea of the 18-foot. I can remember the last time you brought it before, and it was just 10 foot, and we agreed that backing the boat down by your neighbor's yard at 10 foot was, or a car getting in and out was so bad. I think 18 foot is sufficient for getting in and out of and around another vehicle, so.
Well, for me, I understand what these drawings show in the one where it's not split and it just shows, in essence, the square footage of a potential home that could be built and cover that much area. I've had a lot of thought about this and I think when lots on our gut front are platted and the neighbors have purchased and they expect those things to be, that's what they have and have had. And while I don't necessarily disagree, there's no way to disagree, there have been some others, but in this area, when you look, I think it does change, has the potential to change our whole gut front. If we don't just stay with what was platted. And the fact that they have the right to ask, I respect that, but in this case, I am not going to be in favor of splitting that.
And if they choose, they could do a duplex on that same spot.
Yeah,
But it'd be one whole lot.
yeah, this is just, for me, yeah, that's correct. That option does exist, it doesn't give them 2 lots of it.
Right.
And that's what it appears is the estate people are looking to do, so. Anything, if there's, we're at the point of either additional questions, comments, or a motion.
I make a motion, we deny the lot split.
Motion to deny, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny. Is there any further discussion? Liz, you call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy,
Yes.
Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Key,
Yes.
Mr. Pollock,
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
No.
Okay. Moving to change, number 2 is in, change of occupancy at 4101 Highway 98. CPZ approved. We'll open our first, Mario, again, please.
Yes, Mayor, this came before the planning board, it's a use of occupancy This particular parcel has been a convenience store or restaurant and is currently lying vacant. We have a current grocery store and liquor store in a little warehouse area off of 15th Street. They would like to relocate to this location. When you go through our, I think it's land development code, there is no specific approval or denial of these two uses, so it leaves it open for interpretation for the planning board and the city council to approve or deny this particular use of grocery store and liquor store.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna open the public hearing for those here that the packet, as far as the request, has been laid out, but if there's those that want to speak, floor is open. Again, okay, it's on the packet, it's kind of 3 to 1. Okay, you have a, yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
Okay, the planning and zoning board voted 4-1 to recommend approval. So I'm here to speak for myself because I was the one negative vote. And I believe that based on the way the LDR is written, this is a non-conforming use. Right now, the only area where you're allowed that type of store is in general commercial property. This is tourist commercial property, and there's nothing in tourist commercial property, like Mario said. It's open for interpretation. However, the closest thing in tourist commercial that would permit something like that is gasoline sales combined with a small food market. There's no gasoline sales there. So I would say that basically one of two things needs to happen if you want to approve this. One, a variance has to come in because this would be a non-conforming use to have a liquor store and a market. The second thing would be is to change the LDR to allow that type of use in tourist commercial. And that's what I would recommend, because if somebody else comes in and wants it, we want to have the LDR conform with what's going on. And if you want to approve something like this, then I would ask you to look at putting a liquor establishment on our only arterial highway in Mexico Beach. That could open us up to a situation like existed in St. Joe Beach at one time, where they had 4 liquor establishments on 98. This is probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And I, for one, don't want that to happen. I like the way we are now. What I would think we need to do if we amend the LDR is to amend the tourist commercial section to allow for neighborhood convenience stores, but not allow for liquor stores. And that would be my recommendation. Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right, I pretty much agree. I am the primary owner of the 2 stores in question. My name is Mark Rice. I pretty much agree with this gentleman as far as the LDR being rewritten or whatever. But I don't really see anything happening like what he, not saying that it can't, but these liquor licenses are very, very, very expensive. So for somebody to come in and spend north of $250,000 for a license to try to put it in a small community like this, you're gonna have the same problem that you had in St. Joe, where there's just not enough mass to exist. And the other thing I would like to say is, I like the idea of 98, but what if we were on 98, as some of you may know, but the storm forced us out, the hurricane, and we wound up over there because it was the only option we had available. I think that community there is in favor of it, but there are a number of people back there that are kind of disgruntled by the fact that we're over there because of the traffic that we create and so on and so forth. So this is also a natural progression of growth, which is not the city's concern, but you know, it is a huge sign in my mind that progress is being made, and we're in the rebuilding process. So that's all.
All right, public hearing is still open. Anyone else here to speak on item number 2? All right, we'll close the public hearing, come to the table. I want to start by saying, the LDR was written in 1991, the language that's in it are the descriptions of the properties that are listed. This is not the first time that the council has been handed what I think is the proper way, which is to use discretion when it's not definitively listed as something that can't go there. I think it's this table's obligation to decide if that's what you want there, is that what you don't want there. First of all, that store was a convenience store. It was built as a convenience store and a gas station. It had both of those. Pre-LDR. But for me, I think there's the latitude that the LDR gives this council. You can't always write it down, and if we don't use some discretionary, or use as a council, good discretionary judgment, then we're gonna be just looking for every answer on some page when it's not there. And to me, this is a very logical move. I do not think it circumvents the LDR in any way. In fact, I think it makes good sense, what's trying to be put there.
Well,
That's all I have to say.
I'm in agreement with it, and again, like Mr. Bush says, you know, he thinks you need to amend the LDR. Well, the LDR is, like the mayor has said, is, you know, came about in 1991, and actually, a bunch of college students got together and put it together with grant money, it's my understanding. And so, probably wasn't the most professional group, and we've had issues with the LDR, and, you know, I think the mayor's absolutely right, we can use discretionary, but, you know, at some point, we may need to start looking at the LDR and see if we can kind of bring it up to speed. I mean, how often do you have problems with it, Mr. Bush, with the LDR on issues?
Only occasionally. However, I'd like to correct that the LDR was redone in 2018.
Was it redone in 2018? And who redid it?
I don't know, I didn't have anything to do with it. I was supposed to sit down with a consultant, we were gonna work it out, and it was farmed out to somebody else, and I don't know yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Was
what
it?
they call gone through, updated supposedly.
Yeah, okay.
That section wasn't.
The primary things that were updated after Hurricane Michael were things to ensure that it would be consistent with the new comprehensive plan changes we were doing, and then some reorganization. These lists of uses, I don't think that there was, that was all accomplished in about 6 weeks. I don't think these lists of uses.
Nothing in that section was good. All right, comments from the table? Additional comments? Chair will entertain a further discussion or a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the, allowing them to change of occupancy on Highway 98, 4101.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Ms. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Key?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Before moving on, with that approval, you're gonna be hard pressed in the future to deny a similar request in tourist commercial. If you do want more limitations, such as only liquor if it's associated with grocery sales, that's something you could look at doing in your land development code to clarify this. But as far as moving forward today, you're done, they're approved.
Well, we got very little property that can even be done that way. I mean, there's almost no place else to do it, so I share Mr. Bush's concerns if we had the kind of facilities that were gonna turn commercial and possibly liquor store, but we just don't have it. I mean, there's almost no place here to do anything. And we've already got the one place is a gas station, and that's going back as a gas station. And so, really, we really don't have anything else. So, just as a comment.
Okay. Number 3. This is a resolution for a reduction in a change order. Marty, do you want, I mean, is there any, it's self-explanatory what it is, but is there any comments for you before we
But again,
call to read?
we had a good set of drawings, they did the work, we're at the end of the job. It's the time to basically take the contingency out so we can close out the project.
Only question I have, is this a new practice in terms of the city making a resolution to reduce I mean, are you gonna say we have to do it if there's an increase, or you have to have a resolution to do it if there's a decrease? I just don't ever remember doing this on a deduct.
We didn't tend to do as many resolutions before Mr. Gisbert took over. It was a good suggestion for record-keeping purposes to do more of them on these deducts if you don't want them.
No, I'm just trying to, you know, you sort of get programmed to how things operate, and I just don't recall us ever doing that. I don't have, it's just a record keeping. All right, the chair will entertain a motion to read resolution 20-28.
Make a motion to read the resolution 20-28 by title only.
Have a motion second, any objection to reading? Lindsay, would you read, please?
A resolution of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, approving change order number 2 to the city's agreement with North Florida Construction, Inc. for the sanitary sewer repair project, resulting in a cost reduction to remove unused contingency in the amount of $38,700.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt resolution 20-28.
Second.
Have a motion second. Again, is there any questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Ms. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Key?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Okay, next is our townhome resolution. So everyone knows we have made every attempt to make this about as clear as we can about what can go back in those small little lots that were left from Michael. This is the first reading. While it doesn't call for a public hearing, I want to open the floor to those that may be here or have interest in this, or have a question about it.
Can I speak on one?
You can speak about townhomes already.
This was something, I just wanted maybe the council to give a dig on. This was brought up probably about 6 months ago or so. We definitely need to have this district and put these places back, give the people a chance to build. But it's on the level of the attachment easement. And if you look in the LDR 2.02107, page 27, it talks about attachment easement. And it says the structure can be built back on the property line, and the owner shall grant an attachment easement to adjacent property owners in tourist, commercial, and general commercial only. And then it says below that, about the minimum setback will be 10 feet in between buildings if there's not an attachment easement. So, when you build townhomes in general commercial and tourist commercial, because that's the only place you can legally build it in the current LDR, you have to have an attachment easement, or you have to put the 10-foot setback. So I just wanted the council to maybe look at that with Nick and see this may be an opportunity to, maybe these places should have attachment easements, or this category should follow this rule, because we know we've had people, they're squabbling amongst each other. I don't know if this will help. It's just another mechanism for people to use and say, okay, you do have to, you know, if you're gonna attach back, you need to have this easement, and you know, you have to do certain things. If you're not, then you have to adhere to a 10-foot setback. And I think, you know, it never mentioned high-density residential in here because it's really not allowed, you know, to do townhouses in there. And this is to cover our non-conforming stuff and to get it back conforming. And just that'd be something we want to look at. And the other thing I've seen, a lot of these addresses that I've seen on there are already built in tourist commercial and general commercial. So they're already built to a code. So I don't know if we need to sweep those into a new category. But if you look at some of the stuff on 40th Street or 41st Street or some of these other streets that were built, especially after '01, they were all built to the LDR, which was attachment easements. You know, we'd have to check that, but they were all built to the setbacks, to the current code. The impervious was already there, with the 80%, which you could cover. You know, there's some properties that have been captured in this category that are actually conforming. And then we have a lot of other stuff, the older townhomes and stuff, you know, Pier Road, we didn't have easements. You know, it's, you see it, I mean, we want the city to be rebuilt back. And I don't know, this may help people, it may not, it may help the city, but that's just my comments on that. And I don't know if it wants to speak on.
Okay, I'm trying to think, from my, just being involved in the attachment easement in the general commercial categories, I don't understand where there's a disconnect in your discussion. Now, maybe, so I don't, Nick, did you follow that?
I believe the attachment easement, the way it applies in general commercial and tourist commercial, is that ordinarily you have a setback, but if you get an attachment easement, you can build right on the property line.
Right.
The rule written for the town district just reduces the setback to 0, so there isn't an attachment easement required. It's not a bad suggestion. You could add that to the rules, but right now it's not required. I think that's the point being made, is that the attachment easements reduce friction in the future if there's a problem, if there's damage.
Well, I know we discussed that, you know, attachment easement has had, at this table, and some of the issues with that. Can you actually require it? Can we get into that? I mean, can you make that, these two owners will issue an attachment easement for these two? Okay, then it come up that we can suggest it?
We could build it into our land development code that one would be required, but we couldn't dictate the exact terms or exactly what it would say. Yeah, that's gonna be up to them to work that through.
All right. And the only other comment I have is, if we have properties that have been identified in this new ordinance that are outside the scope of what we're trying to do, then we need to double check that without question.
So were you saying that some of these parcels that are scheduled to be rezoned are not currently residential high density, they're some other category like?
They were originally built in tourist commercial or general commercial, so they had their density, they had their impervious, they're technically, for all intents and purposes, they're conforming, or they should be. And the ones I see are mostly on the highway that were in the tourist commercial and general commercial districts. And that were built at a later time. I mean, the non-conforming issues we have, I think we can all agree, were on townhouses that were built years and years ago, probably before we even had zoning districts. Just, Pier Road, little townhouses here or there. So, that's just.
I think what Jason's trying to say, sorry, Jason.
Go ahead.
Let me just jump in here.
current zoning map is incorrect. That's really it. There are places called out as high density residential currently that aren't actually high density residential. So that's why they're in this district, because they were properly identified based on the map that we have. The map that we have, we believe to be incorrect.
The background for how this list came about, we, our staff relied on the Bay County GIS folks who have been maintaining zoning maps to show areas that, I mean, I'm looking at their map online right now compared to the map in your packet, and it does match up. The area shown as first high density, residential high density map that they have is they still call it tourist residential, but it's the equivalent category. If there's an issue about any of these parcels that are zoned, they're highlighted in light blue to be rezoned, any of those are not currently residential high density, that's not anything that we've been aware of, and that would have been through just some kind of mistake with the maintenance of the zoning map, but they're all supposed to be high density residential.
According to Bay County's website now, Gina is looking at finding the older records that I don't have any access to. We did ask Dewberry to provide the latest and greatest map that they had to make sure that if there was something that had been adopted at some point in time, that it was corrected. But I think you were working on the last go-through on the map to call out anything that needed to be called out. But again, to the best of our knowledge, we were strictly directed to do this on the residential, not touch the commercial component. If it's in commercial, it's already permitted, so there was no reason to make a change within commercial.
I'll look at my records in case I have something from 3 or 4 years ago that shows an older zoning map.
Okay.
I can't tell you just from experience, there have been very, very few successful rezonings in the city, and I don't think there have been any in this area in the last 5 years.
And that's why I think the map is wrong.
And you can see, Nick, if you look on there at some spots, not to interrupt, but you can still see some townhomes that have been developed. They're individually owned, and they're still labeling those tourist commercial. One in particular is on 42nd Street. There's another one on, I think, 37, 38. So somehow those are all individually owned, but they still have the TC label on them. Whereas you got some of the other ones that were TC, been developed, and now they have the high density residential. So it may not, y'all are covering it, capturing these properties. Maybe something else you don't have to regulate, you don't have to put it under this umbrella, just go back and identify the true non-conforming properties and get them under this district so they can move on.
So it's fine if there are townhomes on tourist commercial before and after, those don't need to be changed. If there are actually any parcels though that should be tourist commercial now and are shown on the maps as high density residential, that's an issue. I don't know if that actually has occurred or not.
That it has occurred, for sure.
Can we, this is a first reading, can we, through this discussion, realize or at least acknowledge that we need to clean or do maybe some more verification? Or should we not have the first reading?
Between the first and second reading, you could have minor changes, and if we end up realizing we should eliminate a handful of parcels from this list of nearly 200, that would be acceptable. I would not suggest adding any parcels, since folks wouldn't have full notice at that point.
All right, are we in a position, Mario, to do some to have that? So we'll know if there's some tweaking? Okay. All right, then, is there any other comments? Yes, sir.
There was some talk at the planning and zoning meeting about taking the any wording for multifamily out of this altogether. And my concern with that is, two things. One, if it's not in there, it's not addressed, and two, in the section of the land development code where it says use is allowed within a district, this being a district, if multifamily isn't allowed, or isn't in there, then if something were to come about where it needed to be done, then it would have to go to the council to possibly be denied. And my concern is there's existing townhome units on these skinny lots that were stacked, separate parcels, two individual parcels with stacked airspace. And one in particular I'm working on, and Mario's familiar with that one. I just wanna make sure that once this is passed, that these guys that have, two stacked parcels aren't pushed out of this because multifamily isn't in it. And I understand that the, case by case can be viewed by the council case by case basis, but it can also be denied by the council if it's not specified in the land development code. And that's my concern, that there are existing multiple parcels on one slither of land, stacked. So that's my concern with not having multifamily addressed.
In the last planning board meeting, we did take out, I believe, 3 words within the ordinance. One was residential attached. We took out the word attached because the way that we've set this up, it's a 0 lot line. It does not have to share a common wall. It can share a common wall, but it does not have to. And quite a few of these lots are selling as individual lots and will be reestablished as individual homes, standalone, without their neighbor building next to it. So you can build a foundation system, you can build the wall, you can build everything about this as completely detached homes. So we wanted to take that word attached, so it's not a requirement. So we took that out. And then also because the parcels that we're talking about are less than 30 feet, but typically 15 feet wide, the idea of having 2 units on 15 feet is problematic because there's no way to provide parking and everything else. So we did, as a proactive move, take out the words multifamily and attached from the language. So that was something that the planning board did in our last meeting, and it's here for you guys to either approve or add back.
We've actually, so the planning board made those recommendations, that made sense. Since then, staff and I have drawn up a resolution, an ordinance that would accomplish that. You'll have a first reading next meeting on that ordinance, unless you say today, no, that's a terrible idea, we don't wanna do that. But we were gonna get to that discussion by after this vote. None of those changes have actually happened yet, those are your decision, when you make those changes.
I thought I understood all about this when we started doing it. I really did. I thought I had.
Here's where it came about. So I think in most of our minds, we thought if somebody had enough room and wanted to build a detached house with a small setback, that they could. Let's say they wanted to be 5 feet off the property line, had enough space. As we worked through this and we got more questions from folks and looked at the language closer and talked to our planner, the language really suggests that you have to be attached. And I don't think that's what everyone prefers for those handful of people who are able to build without being attached.
So you're saying that let's just use Pier Road, something we're all very familiar with. Those little 30-foot lots can be a single-family home with required setbacks? They can be a single-family home with 0 setbacks?
They can be, but what we're talking about is a change that would allow them, if they want to build a detached home with a very small space between their home and the home next door. There wouldn't be a required setback, but if they wanted to be 3 or 4 feet off the property line, they could do that.
And again, typically,
See, here,
lots are 15 feet.
we discussed multiple times about the fire code. So if you have detached homes, you can't meet the 10 foot between the houses. This for single family homes, and we were gonna put that, what was there. What was there, not what somebody might wanna do later, but just what was there. So how do you deal with, if you're gonna allow a single-family house in a 30-foot lot with, you just, Gina, help me, but what's the?
Firewall,
It's still a firewall.
Yeah, but,
same as.
so you
the
have
house.
a firewall even though you don't meet the setback,
That's right,
and that meets the fire code.
correct,
So those homes would have to have exterior firewalls
correct,
different from a quote residential home.
correct.
Which is a requirement if it were attached or detached.
That's correct.
Both are required, you have to have the separation.
Okay. So Lance's comments are that he's working with somebody that has stacked, which in essence, multifamily housing on a 30-foot lot.
It's less than 30 feet. It's probably 20, around 20, 22, 25, something like that. It's small. But it was previously, there were two units owned by two different owners. And, the issue is the issue that's now been resolved, pending this, is the upper unit owners wanted to build back, and the lower unit didn't. And, so they bought the lower unit's parcel so that they could have structure to build their upper units. And now they own both, but they're still two individually owned, individually parceled airspaces. And if this specifically does not include multifamily, then naturally you'd have to go through the council to get it approved. And if it were to be denied, which can very well happen, then somebody would be out of a parcel that they own.
And Mayor, these parcels that he's talking about are three separate parcels that are Z-shaped. I mean, it isn't just a straight 15-foot wide by 100-foot long. One of them is 6 feet wide in one area, and then it's 22 feet wide in another area, and the other one's 25 feet wide and 10 feet wide. It's this weird shape, and what should have probably happened from its onset was it should have been a condo. If you're gonna create a multi-layered 4-unit or 5-unit building, it should have been a condo, because the problem of a unit on top of a unit on one piece of land is typically a condo type setup,
How
not
do you
a
parcel?
parcel and a
How do you
parcel.
parcel an airspace?
I have no idea. That it was done and I can't argue with what was done.
I'm not gonna know that.
There's a lot of,
I've never heard of
surprises.
How do you do
I think it's a one-off.
Okay,
We
so,
should leave it as a one-off.
what the planning and zoning board did is remove multifamily, which would remove this option that Lance has brought to the table, is that correct?
Correct.
Unless it's grandfather.
It's
Because
grandfathered.
We have
Yeah, we have
very
Grandfather.
favorable, we have very favorable rules in our comprehensive plan and land
Well,
development.
do we need to get bogged down in an oddball situation that, I mean,
No, I'm not saying we have to, if it's grandfathered into the comp plan, I would like to be able to say this meeting on record that it will be allowed to be done, that way.
well, it's already stated, if it's grandfathered in, it's
Okay.
done, I mean, it's already,
Okay, I just wanna make sure.
I just didn't understand how-
There's other things that have been about it, me, the land development too, so I'm just a little weary. But that's what I was looking, that's what I was after.
okay. So let's, before we pull back here, do we wanna have the first reading and recognize that there are verifications to be done on parcels that may or may not fall into the right zoning categories before we have a second reading?
Right, if we realize that anything was mapped incorrectly,
Right,
we're
then-
most likely going to remove it.
All right, so council, if that is the desire, we will entertain a motion for a first reading of ordinance 749.
Should we have the motion with the understanding there could be a change?
Well, it's the first reading, so there is an option, automatic option implied that you have time, you have between now and the month from now when it's read again, that we will, and we've discussed it, it's on the record, we're just gonna do those verifications.
And if you made a change in terms of this multifamily versus detached, that's a separate issue. We'll handle that.
Yeah, that's gonna be handled differently. Okay,
And then I make a motion, we read ordinance 749 by title only.
right,
Second.
we have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All right, Ms. Lindsay? Would you read, please?
An ordinance initiated by the City of Mexico Beach to rezone from residential high density to townhome district those certain parcels of land lying within the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, as listed and more particularly described in the body of this ordinance and located on Miramar Drive, South 42nd Street, South 41st Street, South 40th Street, South 39th Street, South 38th Street, South 37th Street, South 35th Street, South 32nd Street, South 29th Street, and US Highway 98 between South 23rd Street and North 19th Street, consisting of approximately 9 non-contiguous acres, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, and providing that this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Thank you. That will go on for a second reading. Bobby, I'm gonna pass the chair to you on this next one, long enough for me to take care of something.
Okay. This is a resolution, Hurricane Sally emergency declaration. Mario?
Yes, as everyone knows, we had a hurricane that affected the Gulf of Mexico last week. We had a substantial amount of rainwater. That rainwater caused some intrusions within our sewer systems, caused some degradation on one of our bridges, caused extra work for the city, and also caused some major erosion within Mexico Beach. So with this declaration, it will allow us to go after monies to basically reimburse the city for its expenditures through the state.
Okay, do we need to go to the public on this?
Probably would hurt.
Okay, the chair is open to the public. Any comments? Seeing no comments, we open to the table. Any comments?
This just gives us a right just to apply or proceed with any kind of grants or,
Okay, the chair entertain a motion to read resolution 20-29.
Second.
You gotta make a motion.
Okay, because you're in charge. I'll make a motion to read resolution 2029 Hurricane Sally Emergency Declaration by title
Is there a second?
Ordinance 749.
Second.
That was not 749, excuse me, that's a resolution 2029, I'm sorry. I added more than I'm supposed to do in there.
Linda?
You want me to call roll, or just
No,
read?
Read
Okay.
resolution.
A resolution and proclamation of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, proclaiming the existence of state of emergency regarding Hurricane Sally.
Now you call roll.
So, Ms. Call,
Yes.
Mr. Key,
Yes.
Mr. Pollock,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Okay. The next one is a welcome center bid. Mario?
Thank you. As everyone knows, we put the project out to bid. It came in high. We put the project out to bid a second time with hopes of getting some of the local contractors to supply some bids. We did get 2 smaller contractors to bid. However, the prices came in very similar to what we had before. We're still over $100,000 over budget on the funds that we hope to receive through FEMA and our insurance company. What I'd like to propose to council, because I don't see us capturing $100,000 to make this happen, is in short discussion with the attorney just before the meeting, I had an idea that we bounced across. Taking the drawings that we have, putting them out to modular builders to see if there's an interest from a modular company to basically use our drawings as a performance set of drawings. In other words, instead of building it exactly the way that our drawings show, have a modular builder propose a way of building it that still meets the 140-mile-an-hour winds, that still has the impact glass, that still has the ceiling heights, all those things. So basically use the drawings as performance specs and get it out where it's still a public, open bid, but try to focus on getting someone to build these things modularly. Again, the number of bids that we're getting is pretty minimal, mainly because there's just so much work that is going on in this region that getting a contractor to come out here to build a 1,000 square foot commercial space is, there's just not enough people out there interested in this small job, with all the rules and regs that you have to follow for commercial buildings. So if council will consider that, that's my proposal.
Okay, Chair, we'll just go back to the.
Thank you very much, sorry about that. Well, we think that's a good idea to, I mean,
I do.
we don't have $100,000.
Would the cost be that big of a difference, do you think, with a modular instead of a?
One of the things that we've noticed here, and I'll rely on Gina also, is if you look at the number of homes that are being built right now, I would say that probably 30% of the homes that are being built right now at a lower cost are modular built homes. So it might provide us an opportunity to get this thing built for a good bit of savings, so.
Oh, $400,000 for 1,000 square foot.
I know, I just blew.
That's pretty high. I think we need to look at modular.
Look at something.
We good with that? Just see what, I mean, we hadn't lost anything.
The building is not overly complex. I mean, it's a pretty simple rectangular building. It lends itself to this kind of construction. So I'm hopeful that getting these things out and knocking on some doors will open up an opportunity.
All right, well then we'll move forward with that idea and see what happens. Okay, Bobby, you got on here special master review?
Yes, of course, over the past month, we have been talking and looking at, problems we have within the city and the code enforcement and what she has to do and where it may go from whatever step, because people have not been adhering to it. So in looking at the special master, according to our LDR, it shows it has to be assigned every 2 years to somebody. It could be to the same person. I think we had, who was Ms. Sutton, who was the last special master. I don't think we even knew he was one anymore, which he has not been assigned, so I feel like we need to look to get a special master. Yes. Mario, do we need to put it out?
We would advertise on our Facebook, advertise in the newspaper, and basically see if there's anyone interested. This is a non-paying position, so we'll see if we can get somebody that wants to help serve Mexico Beach.
Well, I feel like we're gonna have to use one, because there are some people that are not complying to Kathy's, questions, or letters, or whatever has been sent out to us. So, it's something we really need to jump into.
I think we can handle that by we have to advertise for it. And if you know anybody that has an interest, really just have some knowledgeable LDR. I mean, most of it is through, there's guidelines to go by, and if we can find somebody that's in a place with an attorney, and that lended itself, or at least to some degree, you don't often get a volunteer that's an attorney. I think most people pay for it, special master.
Most cities do.
Most cities do, so.
Well, according to the.
No, we've tried to escape by without paying somebody.
That's gonna be hard to do.
Oh, it sure will. I don't say that it won't be, but I mean, we
Put it out.
can at least try.
What, just out of, just guess, what do they pay?
It's usually a per file charge of maybe $100 to $200. It's not particularly expensive, you don't tend to see a straight hourly fee, but it varies.
Per file, that's how you.
Per case.
Per case.
Per case, yeah.
I just think we need to see if we can find somebody free first. Which I doubt it, and then I believe we need.
We gotta have somebody, cause this, yeah, I agree, Bob,
Oh, we got it.
but that's gonna be that's gonna prove, if you sort of read the paper or watch on the news, Special Masters in Bay County are pretty busy right now.
They are, and the code we have does allow for automatic reappointments, so if Mr. Studstill is still interested, he could be, he's qualified to do some hearings now, but I think we realize we need to look for other options.
Yeah, let's just see what's happening.
Well, do it have to be a resident? I couldn't see.
No, it doesn't have to be a resident, it doesn't have to be an attorney, it's just someone that you believe will do a good job.
And he could take your advice.
Right.
Okay, so I think we need to jump.
Yeah, we need to put a notice out there, let's see what happens. I see some in here.
But will they work free?
I didn't say that, I just said I see some in here.
Will they work free?
Okay, moving on, number 8. Mario, that's you.
Mayor, the planning board in the past had recommended a change for the purpose and intent. Don't know where it got lost in the translation of making it to you, but the planning board chair would like to make a proposal to the council.
Okay?
Okay, what, in your packet, what you've got, the first page of the purpose and intent is the one that you approved and the one that was sent to the state, the state approved and sent back. The second page is what we are asking, the planning and zoning board is asking for your permission to seek an amendment to include this instead of what is currently on board. And I would like to kind of brief you on why this is going on. And in order to do this, I don't have any official documents. All I've got are my notes and my personal papers that we wrote during the development of the comp plan. So I'm gonna reflect on those. Some things, I don't have anything to cover. But the Planning and Zoning Board was tasked in June of 2007 to come up with a new comp plan. And under state law, it's required every 10 years, and it's looking at how the city hopes to develop within the next 10-year period. And they went in, the state went in and identified some areas that needed to be changed and some areas that we were lacking. And two of the areas which we were shortcomings were, one, we're missing a vision component, which basically said what we see the city being. And second, the city's intent was unclear. So when we started looking at the comp plan, we decided we need to address these two things before we actually start writing the comp plan, because what we write on the comp plan is going to basically be a result of what we expect the city to be within the next 10 years. So on July the 12th, I briefed the city council on the procedure that the Planning and Zoning Board hope to use over the next year to develop the comp plan, get your approval, and then send it to the state. Part of that plan was to hold a meeting, a workshop, where we would invite everybody from the city to come in and provide their input on what they wanted the city to be. And I know there are two people here in the meeting that were right here at the council, that were at that meeting, who could verify what we did. But basically, we sat down, broke into groups, and then all the groups came together. They provided me what they thought the city should look like in the future. Immediately after that meeting, we didn't have time to get on the agenda, so I came in and spoke on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Board during the citizen comment portion and provided you what I thought, or what we came out with that meeting, and that is what's on the second page of what you've got there. And I basically ask for your blessing. Can we use this to proceed in developing the comp plan? And to a person, the response was yes. So we started developing the comp plan one section at a time. And after we finished that one section, we didn't look back at it. We actually didn't finish until somewhere in the last quarter of 2018. And the Planning Commission, Planning Collective provided us an advisor in developing the comp plan. They finished writing a draft, which included an executive summary, which highlighted the areas that were being changed in the comp plan. When that was published in September of 2018, the Planning and Zoning Board noticed some irregularities on what we discussed and what we approved, and submitted those to the Planning Collective to have them changed. October, Michael came. Okay, the Planning and Zoning Collective reworked it and supposedly made the requested changes that we presented to them. The final copy of the planning, of the comp plan was published on December 20th, and it was forwarded to the state without providing the P&Z an opportunity to review what had been done. So you got their final draft, you approved it, you sent it to the state, and we didn't know what was being sent forward. Okay, in April of 2019, the state approved the comp plan, and it was published in May. Upon its being published, it was the first time that the P&Z board had an opportunity to review it, and we noticed that page number 2, your packet there, had somehow been replaced by what page 1 was. And the reason that that's important is because that first paragraph gives the vision of what Mexico Beach is supposed to be, and provides the information that the rest of the comp plan is based on. So, since that time, the Planning and Zoning Board has tried 3 or 4 different times to come before the council and try and get that amendment sent to the state. Initially, we were told, well, we've got other things on our mind, we're trying to recover from Michael, address it at a later time. Then we changed city managers, then we changed city managers again, and we're back trying to do it. So what I guess we're asking you to do, page number 2 is what you initially proved that we were supposed to use to build the comp plan. Page number 1 is what I believe was erroneously sent forward to the state. So what we're asking is your permission to go in and take those steps necessary to make an amendment to the comp plan to change it so that page 2 replaces what's changed on page 1. Questions?
What's the difference in the 2 pages specifically?
Well, the first, page 1 says, this is what the comp plan is. Page 2 says, this is what Mexico Beach should look like. Which is the vision of Mexico Beach, which is what the public meeting came up with.
Very few words have changed,
It's just the first paragraph.
Just a paragraph.
But basically, that's the most important part of the comp plan.
Well, on the first one, there's B, encourage and support, and I don't see that one on the second one. You got it?
I've got my copy.
I believe Mr. Bush is only talking about the purpose, not the city's intent.
Okay. Now, I am completely concerned with what you just said, because I was at all those meetings, as you well know. And I was appalled when I saw the proposed one, which I guess is what you're calling page 2, because the proposed new purpose and intent eliminates what I consider to be safeguards for the permanent population, the permanent residents, and the city. And there are 3 major things that the proposed one completely eliminates. So, if I understand what you just said,
We are looking to replace intent. That 3-line first thing in there, that's the only thing we're looking at changing,
Just the purpose.
which gives the vision, the purpose.
Confusing because it's labeled differently on the 2 different versions, but it's the first paragraph on both, right?
all right, so here's the current page. All right, let's go to the second page here. It says purpose and then intent. So you want this to be the official one?
And I don't want that, I want to make an amendment to have that as the purpose.
So that means
The only thing that changes is those 3 lines.
First paragraph.
Okay, the one that evidently got sent, which I thought was the one that we had approved, says that it provides a fiscal plan for expansion of levels of service to the city's infrastructure. And you want to take that out. Because-
Again, I don't have I gave my copy of the comp plan to Lindsay, so I don't have that first page.
Well,
I can give you it.
I'm going right here. It would completely remove that, which to me, what I thought we did was, we put this in there so that we would have control over developers coming in to, make sure that they provided, the cost of expanding the levels of service to the city's infrastructure so that the citizens don't get stuck with all of that cost. You know, this, and then you also took out, encourage and support areas for tourist-related activities as well as long-term and permanent residents. I clearly remember the residents talking about we needed some kind of safeguards in there to help the residents to keep the comp plan from being all about the tourists. It needs to have major components for the residents in here. And then you also eliminated provide adequate public services and facilities for new development as related to future permanent and seasonal population projections, and phrased it so that it's just for new residential and economic development resulting from projected population increases. Again, the safeguards that I thought we built in, which came from the citizens, have now just been chucked completely in the one that you are suggesting, if I'm understanding you correctly.
I, again, don't see what you're saying.
Well, it's a simple matter of looking at the 2 things and seeing what's not there. I mean, if you look at the actual words, these things have been eliminated from the proposed version. Down here at the bottom on this second page, it says proposed amendment, and then this one says the current. The current has the safeguards in it, the proposed has them all taken out. So that.
What safeguards are you referring to?
Jim, she's looking at all of this language,
Yeah.
all of this language.
Uh-huh.
You have proposed and current. I mean, she's
I'm-
looking at that word proposed. You are strictly talking about number 1
Number
proposed
one.
and number 1 proposed. The 2 of you need to get on the same songbook.
Okay, so
I'm the one that put proposed at the bottom of it because
That is-
that's,
that's okay.
But the whole page should not have been included if the
Well,
intent of the
then-
change wasn't the whole
Then
page.
let's go back to those 3 things. Let's look at the first one that says, the purpose of the comprehensive plan is to guide the future growth and development of the built environment, protect natural resources, and provide a fiscal plan for expansion of levels of service to the city's infrastructure. That's the purpose. We switch to the other purpose, which is the second one. It says the City of Mexico Beach's objective is to manage growth so as to retain family-oriented quality of life, small-town values that have been its tradition, and encourage economically beneficial growth and affordable housing that is consistent with a traditional small-town atmosphere. That phrase is part of the intent on the first one. So the purpose on the first and the purpose on the second are completely different things. So I'm saying that the safeguard for the city, which is to provide a fiscal plan for expansion of levels of service to the city's infrastructure, has been completely removed from this second version. Therefore, a safeguard for the city has been removed from the comprehensive plan.
Okay, my response to that is that here, section 2, the city's intent is to, those things are included in there.
No. Fiscal plan for expansion of levels of service to the city's infrastructure is nowhere on your second page. Nowhere.
In other words,
No, it isn't.
we've
Okay, then I think, what my concern for this is, and I attended all but one of the 18 months of meetings for this comprehensive plan review. My belief is that somewhere along the line, the things that the people who came and participated in this backbone of the comprehensive plan, those things are not being protected and put into this second one, and I'm confused as to how we arrived at this second one. So, I think there's a major problem here, and I think any action on this right now in this meeting is way out of line. I think, at least for me, speaking as someone who participated in this and as a citizen, I would very much like to sit down with you, Jim, and see where in the world we're so far apart on this, because I don't understand.
I think that's a great idea. Bill, what you got?
The question is, I mean, I don't have a copy of everything to look at, didn't pick one up, sorry, but in listening, for a purpose of where we want to go, it to me sounds like both of them actually have a certain amount of acceptability, and I'm wondering, instead of getting rid of one and agglomerating, can we not combine them that covers all of this in one and call it purpose? I think we have indeed two different things going on, but purpose doesn't have to be just one, it can be this and including this.
And I don't have any problem keeping the current purpose in there, but then you need to add objective underneath that. Because again, that's the vision for Mexico Beach, not the current purpose.
Well, I think that we need to literally just table this. I would love for y'all to table this.
There's no action to this, it's just.
This isn't an action item,
Okay, well then, I would love to talk to you, Jim.
just a discussion, and I can see it's gonna lead to more discussion, and so
Yeah.
that all
All I'm doing is seeking your permission to begin addressing, putting in an amendment. And again, I have no problem leaving that in as long as the other gets it.
well, if the board thinks that there is a need to do that, that's part of what y'all do, is to bring us suggestions about clarifying and or making amendments to the comp plan. That's part of the planning and zoning board's purpose. So, by all means, please do so.
And I want to ask Bill, he was the only other person in the room that I know of who was at that meeting. Do you remember
The city of Mexico Beach objected to
Yes.
continue family and everything. Yes, sir.
he remembers that? So.
All right, well, why don't we do that? Well, I mean, as far as the council, I think that none of us would object to you presenting us proposed changes / amendments / updates to what you think is appropriate for the purpose of the, is that a fair statement for everyone?
Yes.
And then we can, some of the backroom stuff that needs to get clarified, y'all can, whatever comments that are gonna stem from this, everybody will have a chance to have their input in. Those are concerns. Thank you, Jim.
The process to change the text of the comprehensive plan, we've been through before. It takes state review, it takes the transmittal hearing, adoption hearing, so it won't happen quickly, nobody's gonna be
That's right.
surprised by it. And we also, if we're going to look at new language, it doesn't have to be only limited to what some people thought we had last year, but if there's a better way to do it now, it can just be new language.
Okay, moving on. 500-year floodplain. Darrell Key.
Okay, so we had a conference call with Leda Cowrie with FEMA and Ben Davis. Leda Cowrie is a sort of a field agent, Department of Field, and it's kind of the liaison between us and Ben. Ben Davis is the mitigation branch director. So we spoke with him, and whenever we spoke to Ben, and whenever Mr. Ben, or I call him Ben, Mr. Davis answered a question, he answered it very authoritative. You did not get the indication that he needed to go ask somebody, because he, again, is the mitigation branch director. So I told him that, I said, you can get really complex and can get really way out in left field on this whole issue, but the only question that I essentially had was, are we gonna lose FEMA funding if we change from the 500-year floodplain to the 100 new 100 that they set plus 18 inches of freeboard? You have to do 12 inches of freeboard based on the state's requirement, and then we added 6 inches because, according to Dina, there's a little bit of discrepancy about what it is. So we just put 6 inches in, and that's what we've done. He said no. So later in the conversation, Dina spoke up and said, well, we've already negotiated and designed to the 500-year floodplain, the lift station, not the lift station, but the cleaning station and the bathroom at the boat ramp. Are we gonna, if we drop it to the 100-year floodplain, is that gonna change? Are we gonna lose any funding? He said, look, again, I'm gonna tell you that the only way that you're gonna lose any FEMA funding is if you put a fire, police, or any other emergency type building in a 500-year floodplain, and then you will lose funding there. But as far as everything else, he said, you have more latitude in this 428 than what is even normally allowable. So we are not gonna lose any FEMA funding if we change it from the 500-year floodplain to the 100-year floodplain. He said it 2 or 3 separate times as we discussed this and as questions were asked. Mario brought up the fact, well, actually, I think Ms. Lita brought up the fact that, you know, one of the things that you should probably do is to any questions, because it seemed to be that we weren't getting it, that what he was saying was, no, you're not gonna mess up any FEMA funding. Just put everything in questions and we'll look at it, and if there is anything, then we can tell you that later. But Ben said, you're not, unless you do what I said, which is put a fire or police or one of those kind of buildings. You know, and I said, we're not gonna do that. We've already designated an area that's in the X, not in a flood zone. So we can rescind the 500-year floodplain. And look, let me go further and say this. You know, everybody has talked to people here, and, you know, everybody understands that it's really difficult to get anything built here now because they don't want to build up. We've already lost some people that sold their lots because they didn't want to build up to this new regulation. They were too old to want to walk upstairs, or either they didn't have the money to go up if it was requiring pilings or whatever. So we've already lost some people. We don't want to lose any more. And, you know, if you get right back to what we just discussed, the purpose and the intent of our city is to keep Mexico Beach looking the way that it did prior to the storm. That's what we're trying to do. I think that, for me, there was a lot of clarification with Sally. The water that we got from Sally, you know, I rode around every single day talking to several different people. You know, our major problem in Mexico Beach is we have a storm draining problem. And maybe some of you don't know that the whole swamp behind, from Highland View, behind Windmark, the development on the left, all the way down here, St. Joe Beach and everything, all that swamp drains out. And 2/3 of that drainage that goes around Bubba Harmon's property, 1/3 of it goes out, hits Cypress Creek, goes to the Intracoastal, but the majority of it comes around and goes right out the 8th Street Bridge. I don't know if any of you noticed how the water was really flowing out of there. And we got in trouble on a couple of wing walls because they weren't designed and built properly. They were not attached by rebar. They had the keyways, but the keyway is just to keep it from slipping. It's another slip safeguard, should have rebar. But anyhow, so I'm saying that we've already got someone, they've already scoped out the storm drainage systems. We'll find out what we can get through mitigation, what was storm damage, what was caused by the storm, all of those things, but it's critical for us to go ahead and get our storm drainage taken care of. So, because if we do that, then essentially, once that water fell, the only places that were flooded up there, they drained out. So, you know, the water is coming into our city faster than our city can take it out, so that tends to make some of that 15th Street and low area over there flood, just like it does above Harmon's property, just like it did over there at Overstreet, all the way to Overstreet. Some of those houses looked like they were on islands. So the 500-year floodplain can be rescinded and people can build back and be well above that. And I've got for instance, the fellow that was here at the last meeting, Mike Guy, gave me a picture of what his is, and he wrote us a letter so that we could understand. I don't know if you can see this very well. I hope that you can see this. This is, if he has to build to the 500-year floodplain, it's like way up that tree. This is the 100-year floodplain with freeboard on it, which would still put him about 18 inches above where that water came in, okay? So this is what he's wanting to build to, because there's no need for him to go up to that level right there when his issues of getting flooded from a storm surge are only indirectly affecting him, because what it does is it backs that stuff up down there, which is what we had with Sally. We had a very small storm surge, probably a foot to a foot and a half, but it slowed the water going out down. So, you know, we need to rescind this 500-year floodplain, allow our people to start rebuilding. We'll not run off the people that are still here, that have not sold their lots, that are retirement community folks that can't afford to build up a really high elevation. So those folks will be able to build and get back in. And I think one of the other things that we should look at in the future is to try and make sure and look at the regulations that we've got, because everybody knows it's a difficult place to build. And I don't know why it's a difficult place to build, other than maybe addressing some issues in the LDR. I don't know that. So, but essentially, we're not going to lose any funds from FEMA by rescinding this, and we're going to allow our citizens to rebuild, and they can start rebuilding now and have substantial savings on what it's going to cost them to build. There's only one other thing that Mr. Davis brought up, and he asked, and I want to ask Mario. I didn't bother to ask them because I thought it wasn't the right place, but he said that he was still waiting on some documentation from us, and that he hadn't received it and wanted to know why. What documentation would he have been waiting on?
A lot of his conversation was very specific to the police, fire, and civic center, so it would have been a request for information on that project.
Okay, all right. Which I told him, I said, we're gonna put all that in the X, so we will get mitigation funding from that. Okay, so anyhow, I would like to see it rescinded, and if anybody out there wants to speak to this, we'd certainly love to have you speak up. Yes, sir.
Just a question, if I heard you right.
Okay.
I think you indicated that, he said if we were still nervous Nellies, we could send a letter to him with specific questions and we would get a written response.
What he essentially said was, he said, what I just told you, we'll put in writing. So if you've got questions, send us those questions and we'll confirm what we just told you. Yeah. And he was pretty adamant about it. He spoke up about it 3 separate times. And after Dina asked him about the boat ramp, he said, listen, again, you have more latitude with this 428, so you can use these funds with more latitude than which is normal. But no, unless the only way you're going to lose any funding is if you put a police and a fire station in a 500-year floodplain.
Heard all of that.
Okay.
It was not what I was asking.
Okay, I misunderstood.
He just stated that he would send us a letter.
No.
Oh, I thought he said he would.
No,
send
he
us a
said
letter about what he was talking about, and we would.
He said if Mario and them wanted to send, they would answer it, and then that way everybody knew what was
Yeah,
questions
I
on.
would recommend that, only because after watching quite a bit of time, these government organizations, many of the people do talk with a lot of authority, and that's great. It helps us know where we are. But I also know that frequently they get changed out. And the next person, unless we have something say, your replacement put this down that this would be, then we're up Schitt's Creek. I would recommend, I am not arguing about whether it's changed or not, but I would recommend we at least hold it until we get those questions answered, so that in the future, when this guy takes a better job or a worse job, the next guy comes in doesn't say, wait a minute, I'm sorry, you guys can't have this because.
Well, if we vote to change it, it's not gonna happen tomorrow. It's gonna take
I realize
a couple of
that we're
months.
talking about the
And-
final vote that puts it in place.
Excuse me?
The final vote, this would have to be done, you have to write a
We,
rewrite.
in other words, we could go ahead and vote whether we want to rescind it or not. And then we got,
Completed until we get the.
no, it is concluded in my mind. He answered the question.
Well-
And we got plenty of time to get documentation, if we wanna send documentation or they wanna
I
send it.
can't stop what you're doing, my recommendation is hold.
I understand.
I think he's just saying get confirmation in writing.
Before we put it totally in place. Protect yourself.
We're going to though, is what I'm trying to say, because it doesn't happen. If we vote to rescind it today, it's not gonna go into effect today.
But until you put the next one in place, you go back.
Well, look, if you really wanna kick it down the road, you can kick it down the road for eternity, really.
Yes, sir, you can.
And so what I'm saying is, you know, if we're gonna have some kind of issue, they'll let us know that, they'll let us know that pretty quickly. Because I would imagine that Mario is gonna get the documentation to those folks ASAP. And, you know, because we're fixing to vote on it, and I'm hoping that we rescind it. And so we'll know if there is any kind of issue that they have not told us the truth, which I don't see, and before there's a change of anybody in FEMA.
Not arguing with you on those
Okay,
points.
all right,
I think he's agreeing.
okay. Yes.
And the reason why I'm standing up here and speaking to you all is I'm the neighbor of Mike Lott. The pictures which Daryl Key just showed you. My home was built probably 12 years ago, and it did not flood. However, when you see what my neighbor, potential neighbor's getting ready to build, it's exorbitant. It is so much more money. It does not blend with the continuity of any other structures. Wherein you have a vision, you're trying to maintain some continuity of lifestyle here. So we don't want to see someone be an anomaly because we can't come to a decision. So I applaud Daryl for this conversation that you had with FEMA. And I understand what you're saying. Everybody wants to see things in writing, but in the meantime, you're alienating potential builders.
There's nothing you can't do that's not going to.
But may I have the floor? If there's parliamentary procedure here, I'll be happy, as soon as I sit down, to you speak, sir.
There, you gonna run the meeting around the mouth.
No, I just-
Listen, look, I want to step in.
Okay.
Those of you that choose to speak to us. You don't speak to people, if you want the floor, you speak to the council.
Thank you.
Okay? Uninterrupted.
Thank you.
Are you finished? I mean, are you through with your comments?
I believe so. I was interrupted, so I'm not.
Well, I'm gonna give you time to get
To read back your
uninterrupted.
thoughts, so I am just, hoping that what Mr. Key is proposing is something that makes sense, based off of the FEMA conversation, and I'm watching potential neighbors wanting to continue with the building of the house. And this makes, it easier on him, because until this is resolved, he doesn't know whether to continue building up, or if he's allowed to do the 100-year plan. So that's all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
I did have a comment on it. And I'm building a house right now, and I built it up for the extra 18 inches, I believe, that we have. But now, when I come to put my air conditioners in, I have a problem because of the extra 1.5 feet. I either have to put them on my deck or someplace else because I can't get them underneath the house. So the question is, and I've built all over the country, we've never required under FEMA to build to a 500-year storm. It was always 100. So I assume that most of the communities around here, are they building to 500 or are they building to 100?
100.
100. So are those communities in danger of losing FEMA funding?
No one is, what he said was, look, what you guys did on a 500-year floodplain is what you did. We didn't tell you you had to do that. What we did was we set a new 100-year flood mark, and then our state says you gotta build 12 inches above that, and our city council said we're gonna add 6 inches to it. Is that, Gina?
The council also adopted the elevation, a new elevation, the 500-year elevation.
Okay.
And then put 18 inches on top of
And then
it.
put 18 inches.
But
So
we're
it's
gonna,
not the 100-year.
yeah, so but we're gonna rescind it if we can. We're gonna try to rescind the 500, then we'll put that 1 foot plus the 6-inch freeboard on top of that 100-year floodplain. That's what I'm proposing.
Right now, if somebody decides to build their house at a 500-year storm.
Absolutely.
Then,
So,
then they have no, they're allowed to do that.
and, you know, and really, if you ride around the city and you really delve into what destruction happened with Hurricane Michael and somewhat flooding from a lot of a big rain event like we just had, you know, I would think that if I was on Hadley, in that section back through there that's right next to the 8th Street Canal where the storm surge came through, where I was on the canal, you know, I would certainly consider building up if it were my personal house. And that's the choice that you're giving them, but you're giving them that choice. And so, you know, some people might say, well, you know, I don't have the money to build up. I don't have a choice. I can't build up and I gotta sell, or either I can do that, and I'm assuming that risk. But what we've done is, we've taken the burden away from them for us to tell them what they have to build up for, because in our mind, that was making it a safe city and giving them that choice. So you're right, exactly. They can build up 15 feet or whatever. So we just gave the choice back to the citizens.
Yeah, I would
If we-
prefer
if
to
we
have
do
the
it.
choice.
Yes.
If it's not saving us any money, so we're not
Well-
getting any benefit out of it.
Well, you know, we're not losing the CRS. We're not losing the community rating system for insurance breaks. And so if we're not losing those, then we're not losing anything, because here's what the deal is with the CRS. You're based on whatever you do to mitigate, future events, you gain points. And those points can range, from 1 to 10. So if you score a 10, you don't get any cuts on your insurance, but if you score a 1, you could save 45% on your insurance. But now, those insurances are for people in a floodplain. It wouldn't affect the people that are having to build up if they're in the shaded X, because they're not considered to be in a flood zone, even though it's called shaded X with this 500 years. So they gotta build up, and they're not gonna get any breaks because they've already got the preferred rates. You don't get a preferred rate if you're already in that category. And there's only two municipalities in the whole state of Florida that rated above a 5. Ocala, I think, was 4, and West Palm, either it's West Palm or Ocala, one was a 4 and one was a 3, and I can't remember which one was which, but that's it. Panama City Beach is rated an 8. Panama City is a 5. Best that we could even really, we're on the coast, you know, we might get an 8, we may get a 6 or 7, maybe, but we're not losing that, because those people can still apply. And here's how we did. With all the stuff that we've done with raising all of our storm sewer, not storm sewer, but our lift stations and our sewer, all of those things, we have gained points by putting paperwork out, some of this stuff that's in here, the studies that you've done, you gain points. So we've gained every point. And the only points that we would lose would be for going up that additional to a 500 year, which is gonna be minimal if you compare all of it. So we're not gonna lose the CRS. Anybody that would get a break is gonna get a break, depending on how we're rated. And you know what? We're actually not even in the system yet, because it hasn't gone that far. And the city administrator at the time contacted the state, and we had this discussion about a week ago. Mexico Beach contacted the state to help them institute the CRS. So we're gaining points. It'll benefit however it works out based on what we do. So we're not losing that either. So there's no lose-lose in this at all. it's all a win-win. So that, and here's the thing that we gotta do, I mean, we're building at a slow rate. We need to get people excited about being here and being able to afford to be here, and let's build it up, because you know what? We can't sell them water and sewer if they're not here, they're not using it. You can't, you're not making anything on what the lot's worth anymore from taxes, and now everybody's paying an 8% millage because there's not enough of us here to pay for stuff. And we're just barely breaking even, and I'm trying to get us where, come on, let's build. Let's build, let's get it going again, and, let's get some revenue here. Oh, sorry, I stepped in.
That's all right.
You doing better?
Go ahead, sir.
I guess my point would be, a lot of us are already in our homes, and I'm one of them, and I feel grateful to be back and everything. If we can speed up the process and allow the rest of the community to get started building, anything that we can do to help the rest of the residents get back in their homes, get back to normal, it's gonna benefit all of us. And we should not be a roadblock. We should be assisting them, and that's my point.
Well, I just wanted to, that 500 year and all that discussion, I think, came about shortly thereafter the hurricane, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now, and I think it was, as I recall, it was recommended and then the 16 inches or 18 inches. But now we've got almost 2 years, or call it 2 years of dealing with Hurricane Sally's and what have you, and we've got we're a little calmer, we're a little wiser, and you've got proof there that the 100 years should be plenty, right?
Well, depending on the area that you're in, yeah. And the other thing that, for what you're saying is, there's a lot of houses over there in the area that I live over there that are having to pay a lot of extra money, and they didn't get any flood then. They don't get any flood in a rain event like we had Sally. The only thing that they get is their ditches fill up because our storm drain system isn't operable like it should yet. And we hope to get that going as quickly as possible. So, yeah, no,
it makes sense that emotions were high back then.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not ill about them making, I totally understand. Listen, the day after the storm, I was standing Overstreet, the day after the storm, it took me till nearly 2 o'clock to saw my way through here. I cleaned out from the very back part of Overstreet, North Long, all the way to the road. Most of that road was cleared. When I got to 15th, I started sawing trees again. When I got to 5th, I started sawing trees again. And I turned down Georgia to go to my house, and halfway down Georgia, my saw broke, and I had to quit. We climbed over the rest of the trees to go look. I've been here every day. I'm not taking a vacation. We're working. Everybody here is working, but everybody was stressed in. I came up to 15th later on that day, and we made our way to 98, and I looked down the road, and there was Bill's house across the road. I was like, man. We were all in a state of shock and devastated feeling that happened to our city. I understand why they thought it was a great idea, but here's something that you must consider. If that storm happened again, exactly like it did again, Tom Driggers brought this point up. Tom Driggers is an engineer. He was an engineer that lived here, had a house. I don't know if he still has a house. He worked mostly in Albany now. He said, Daryl, when Hurricane Michael hit here, everyone had been built to a 500-year floodplain. He said the devastation wouldn't have been much difference. There would only been a few homes that didn't get flooded, that got flooded from water running in, storm sewer backing up and all that stuff. So he said, you can't make this a bulletproof community, but you can overregulate it to where you can kill the community by not letting them build back.
You're living here, it's a gamble.
Right, it is a gamble. I mean, anybody that lives on the coast has to know, especially the eastern coast, there's a chance you're gonna get a hurricane. It'd be like me moving to Kansas and saying, well, I'm not expecting a tornado. That would be crazy, because that's where they happen. So, we live here, you assume some risk by being here. And I think it's all the citizens' right to find out, as long as we have gone to what FEMA says, which is a good level, and then we've added our freeboard, which is 18 inches. I think that's as much as we should do as a community or as a city council to make them do any more as well.
Certainly sounds like you've done your due diligence.
It's a big file, and I'll be glad, I hope we get a good vote today, so I can put this in the file area and not have to look at it much anymore. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yep. Yeah, anybody? Besides your,
I understand what Daryl's saying, but I want to warn people that have insurance, that are working to try to get their houses built, to go ahead, before we finalize this, the 100-year plan, to go ahead and get their permits or whatever working, so they can benefit from whatever the 500-year plan does. Most insurance makes allowances if what the city demands you have for your building. There are people right now that are working on their insurance. We've seen emails from them and all that, where they will benefit from having a 500-year plan through their insurance. Now, for whatever reason, the people that have benefited the most from the 100-year plan is those that did not have insurance, for whatever reason. I'm not condemning them, I'm not saying anything else about it. So this is, I'm talking to the citizens that has the insurance that needs to be worked on. They need to go ahead within probably a 3-month period it takes us to get this go through, to get all their permits going. I still have concerns. Sally gave me concerns. There's a lot of flooding. Your stormwater idea is fine. There's some stuff in that stormwater plan that's not right. They show using 80 acres of St. Joe property, the water to run off through, which goes right behind La Siesta and that whole area. That whole area was flooded. By doing that, it's gonna make it even worse. So that's something we would have to look at on stormwater before we even think about doing it. But something needs to be attacked pretty fast.
Before we attempt to buy that piece to make a retention area, is that what you're saying?
It was donated, or would be donated, according to what that plan was. We wasn't gonna have to buy it. And I'm going from now they did the stormwater thing. When I first got on council, I think they was trying to do it, if I'm right out.
that wasn't a donation,
It wasn't donated.
not the 88, the property by Cures.
It was bought.
No, the property, it's not bought, it's still,
Well,
the
it wouldn't
88
even have to be
acres
bought.
is still under St. Joe.
Okay. But anyway, that worries me big time. I agree with Bill. I don't trust, I know what you say, and I know what y'all talk to and all. Until I see it right, I don't trust it. We got this city, it's financial thing to be determined. And it can't be on words. It needs to be in writing. We need to make sure this city is not gonna be condemned, have to pay or whatever, a change of, political stuff or whatever. So I think that's gonna have to be Mario and Al's situation, dealing with him and getting something to say, you're safe. Jerry, you got anybody?
I've had a lot of phone calls, emails, people talking about, I don't understand it. The majority of the people I've talked to, I think it's 30-something on the emails and 3 against it. A couple of them don't even live here. But, majority of the people I've talked to and all of them 100% to 100. I'm in favor of it.
There's one other thing I got to say, and you remind me on the emails. A lot of emails said, talk about going back to ground level. Darryl brought up, and we need to make sure they realize they're not gonna be able to build on the ground, but they do have height above the crown of the road.
Correct.
So, that's just something I wanted to bring out, so people realize that they're not gonna build a slab on the ground.
Yeah, I've got a few comments. I don't disagree that the 500-year floodplain is excessive, but I equally disagree that the 100-year floodplain is sufficient. The model that FEMA gives us on those maps, it is obvious if you look at our map that we, in my opinion, at 100-year, which is the bare minimum that FEMA recognizes, is false security for many, many people in this city when it comes to stormwater and floodwaters. What other communities have done, that they freeboard the 100-year floodplain. Currently in X zone, we require a foot above the crown of the road. X is considered the highest and best flood category you can be. I would hope that we would look at doing something more than the bare minimum, because I think that's not being responsible government considering what we have dealt with. So one thing that Gulf County, Parker, and Lynn Haven, I believe, and those are just the ones that are right around us, and there may be others. But if you look at the flood zone categories, X is already covered at a foot above the crown of the road. If you went to a freeboard system instead of the 500-year and followed the same scenarios that the X zone now represent, that you could do, let's say, a 2 or 2.5 foot above in a shaded X, and a 3 foot in the high hazard areas, which are AE and VE. Both of those are significantly less than the 500-year, but it's not the minimum. I don't have a problem rescinding the 500-year. I've shared that. I just think there's more to it than just to tell people we're going back to what we had. What we had, at least in my mind, is clearly insufficient. So, I hope we give consideration, and I would propose, not only in the rescinding of it, but that we freeboard the 100-year to include at least 2 in shaded X and 3 in AE and V. Couple other things. The conversation, which I think is great, that was held with the FEMA people, I think again we should have something in our files. And I'm unsure if, and I don't want to repeat that, but is that what's we're going to send something to these people that they respond back and says, what we told you is we're doing that?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Staff and consultants are currently drafting a letter that goes, all the projects that we have completed, received funding, all the projects that we are working on, and all the future projects that we have on the books. We're gonna send a letter that covers every one of those to make sure that if there is a change from 500 to 100, that the city will not incur any additional costs or lose access to money.
Okay. And then lastly for me, it's been mentioned multiple times about emotional decisions about the 500 year. And I just want to speak for me because I was one that was there, and I thought about this. I didn't make an emotional decision. I made a reality decision that I thought was in the best interest of the citizens of the city. I didn't do it. I was sort of the holdout during that time, but I gave a lot of consideration to what had happened. And when I looked and when I studied what the 100-year floodplain did for the city of Mexico Beach, and you can't ignore the very weak spots that we have, 8th Street Canal and our boating canal that allows water to get to the back end of our cities. There is absolutely, I mean, it's pretty simple physics when you look at it. If the Gulf of Mexico is at some height and the water level in the back end of our city is lower than that, it's not going to run out. I mean, it's really just pretty basic. And when I've heard that, well, Maryland didn't flood in Georgia, but there's a lot of places that did. And extra freeboard, to me, is responsible government that says, look, we want to help you, but we don't want to go back to what we had. I just can't imagine that we would return to what we had and think of it that only thing's going to be gained that somebody's going to save some money. There's got to be a better priority for this city than to say that it's all about what it costs you to build. We as a government should install some degree of standards that give our people a good chance. And going back to just the flat 100-year floodplain, that's not it. That absolutely, in my opinion. So I hope we give consideration to some freeboard. It's proven to be very beneficial in other areas. Get rid of the awkwardness of this height, subtract this. And I don't have any problem with that. But I think we need to be more realistic with what we have here and who's going to benefit for the whole city, not just my area or this area. I mean, over 60% of the damage incurred in Hurricane Michael occurred in a shaded X area.
Okay. Al, go back. I kind of liking what you say here about instead of being a flat 1.5 foot, being a freeboard at different zones. Is that right?
Yes. Well, right now, X is a foot above the crown of the road.
Okay.
If we went to a freeboard system on top of the 100, in other words, the 100-year we adopt, but we adopt freeboard for the different zones. X is a foot now. I would suggest putting in shaded X 2 or 2.5 feet, and then AE and VE, which are the high hazard zones anyway, 3 feet. And then you don't have any type of contemplated formula to go by. You go to the map, Frank's in a shaded X zone, he's got to build 2.5 feet above the crown of the road. You go to a high hazard zone, you have to build 3 feet above the crown of the road. Just like in X. X right now is a foot. Nobody's ever complained. But I think we have to recognize that there's need, or at least to me there's need, to do something above just the standard to go back to what we had. It just to me there's too many reasons not to do that.
I like it.
Well, I'm not proposing that we go back to the 100-year floodplain that we had prior to the storm. The FEMA designated, they added a foot to the floodplain. And then I'm talking about putting 1.5 feet of freeboard on top of that. So we actually went up, if we adopt the new, we'll actually be going up 2.5 more feet from what was here when Hurricane Michael.
Based on what? Where does that come from?
Well, that's, from everything that I've read, they raised the elevation of the 100-year floodplain by a foot. Is that not what they did, Gina?
I can't say that, I don't know exactly what the maps look like pre-storm versus post-storm.
I think what you're talking about is, it's not a FEMA floodplain issue necessarily. I think the Florida Building Code was, in the last 2 or 3 years, adjusted so that at least some zones were a foot up.
You're saying no, Gina?
The Florida Building Code states that you have to be a foot above the 100-year floodplain. But what you're asking is, did the floodplain increase by a foot with the new maps? I don't know. Maybe in some places,
No.
maybe not in others,
No.
there's no telling.
I don't think so. What I always understood is one incident could not change the floodplain. What we did by going to the 500 did all the changes.
Well, there is a 100-year floodplain, and what I'm proposing is that we go back to the 100-year floodplain plus put a foot and a half of freeboard above it, because we gotta do a foot for the state, and we gotta do we did 6 inches for our community to save another little safety margin. And listen, you know, if you're talking about people over in the area where 60% of the damage was, you know, most of that damage over there was trees on their houses and wind. And, you know.
And you look down at all south of 98 is shaded X, except for the CCL line.
I understand.
And it's gone.
But it wasn't shaded X prior to the 500-year floodplain. It wasn't called shaded X. I
No,
was in X.
no, it wasn't.
So why did it change?
What do you mean?
FEMA produces those maps.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that's a model that, yeah, FEMA.
Okay,
did.
so.
We didn't do it.
Okay, so, but what I'm saying is, I'm proposing that we go up, we adopt the 100-year floodplain that FEMA agrees to and says that we should do, and then we add a foot and a half freeboard to it, and that's what I'm saying we should do. And I'm saying that any citizen that is in an area where they think that they have a higher risk of flooding, by all means can build up to what they think, and they should. You know, if I was gonna put a place back on Hadley somewhere like that, where it came in 8th Street, I would be building up. If I was on the canal where it came in, you know, and then you're really talking about the storm surge, not just the storm surge backing up the water that's trying to get out of here and all that stuff. You're talking about a huge wave effect where it came in, you know, because what we had here was we had a huge wall of water that came through. That's the reason it went up 8th Street and back all the way up and spread out back in 15th Street.
Okay. Jerry, you have anything?
I have to agree with what Darrell is saying. It just makes sense to me. I see what you're saying, Al, but I have, like everyone else, received these emails from a lot of people, wanting us to rescind this for various reasons. Of course, we are to protect and look out for the citizens, but, like Darrell was saying, if we do this, rescind it to the 100 plus the foot and a half freeboard, that sounds good to me.
The 100-year plus a foot and a half.
The freeboard he was talking about.
And we think that's sufficient, given what we looked at, what we saw, we think that is sufficient. Are we just gonna we're gonna lay the stake of our citizens on the FEMA map, a government map, that is told it's a model to go by?
Why are we laying that on our citizens? Because we're not laying anything on our citizens. We're giving our citizens the ability to decide for themselves. Listen, if you decide to move onto the beach, Bill, you moved onto the beach. Did you feel there was any kind of risk of storm surge and whatever?
Yeah, may I inject one thing to that,
Sure.
in a little clarification? So I built on the beach, and I agree it was crazy. I was in the X-flood zone. I pulled my house in 2 feet on the beach so I could stay out of the AE flood zone, and I was on the X-flood zone. So I did it to myself. I then, that being in the X-flood zone, allowed me to build solid walls on that ground level, which I did. And Lance is back there, I bolted them into the pilings, I had sheetrock, I had, sorry, not sheetrock, I had plywood on both sides with 2x6 studs, I had hardy board on the outside of that. When that storm came, those 160 mile an hour put that house into tension, it tried to take it off the piling. But what got me was the storm flood, or the surge that hit the house. So it's like taking a green tree and tilting it over and you hit it with an axe. It just, and my pilings sheared. So they sheared 12-inch pilings with 4 pieces of rebar in them, and they sheared them off. Had my house not been in the X flood zone, which would have not allowed me to, and I did it myself, and I knew it perfectly well. I knew that shouldn't have been an X flood zone. But had it been wash away walls, my house would have stood. The reason my house didn't stand was because I bolted those walls in on that ground level. And when that storm surge came, there's so much force on the pilings, it sheared them off. Had I not done that, it would. So one of the problems was, in a lot of those beach things, we were in the X flood zone, which you would all agree is crazy, right? On the beach, in the X flood zone, should have been AE. So a lot of properties would have stood on that flood. And to Daryl's point and to Al's point, there are some lower areas that got flooded out. Sharon, I think part of yours was where your house was strictly an elevation type deal, right, on your house, right? To Daryl's point, the house I owned previous on the beach, 2 doors down, it stood. It just blew, the wind blew out a lot of doors, but the structure stood. So I think there's some point here in that you look at what is the, to Al's point, these, and I don't know if I'm still in the flood AX or I'm in the, I'm sorry, in the X or I'm in the AE now. I think I'm in the AE. So there is some merit on both sides of it. A lot of mine, the house fell because I was in the wrong, I was in a flood zone I really shouldn't have been.
But you believed it was okay, because it said, the map said you're in an X zone.
No, I took advantage of it.
Okay.
I took advantage, I knowingly did it, so I don't blame anybody, you know.
I understand.
Common sense would have told me to put wash away walls in.
Well, I get, my point is that it's just obvious that the map isn't something that people should hang their hat on, is my point.
I agree with you.
That's all.
Yeah, you're right, and that shouldn't have been an X flood.
But you,
anybody else?
but you had the right to decide what you decided.
I did.
You decided it.
Right.
And Hurricane Michael was a Category 5.
Yeah, absolute worst case.
You got, and with the, you know, you got, I mean, it could happen again this year.
It could.
If it happened again the same way, if everybody built to the 500, you're still gonna have a catastrophic damage in the city. So what I'm saying is you gotta at some point weigh the value of who can build and who can't build. And look, you know, all the talking that we're doing about keeping our community the way that it used to be. And I've got the little book that Al and his, I guess she's your cousin, wrote, and, you know, from the history and how this place started. I mean, you know, you want to keep it. We're trying to keep it. You know, it's progress. It's never going to stay and be what he did, what he saw when he came here, and when his mom and him had the hardware store and opened the hardware store, the new one and whatever. So it's going to change. But if everybody in here is, you know, I mean, you got pilings everywhere. If they want to be up on it, they can be up on it. But all of that stuff back in through there is no reason for them to go anywhere higher than 100-year floodplain and 1.5 foot of freeboard. And then you kind of halfway retain it, and then you also save the section of town, the one section of town that people that are on fixed incomes and that have lived here can come back and build. They don't have to walk up a huge flight of stairs or go to the extra expense of putting a $20,000 or $30,000 elevator in. But now, you're giving them the right to do that. If they want to do it, they can do it, and they should consider. But they're big people. They're grown-ups.
Yeah, and what I was just clarifying, my house would have come down. It didn't matter if we would have had 10 feet of freeboard. But as long as I stayed in the X flood zone and did not put wash-away walls down, that house was coming down.
There you go.
That's it.
Well, let's talk a minute about Daryl's suggestion of them. And so, in essence, if we do the 100-year plus 1.5 foot, does that change the 1.5 foot? Then also, it makes the X zone 1.5 foot. No?
You can write it however you want, I mean,
So you would exclude the X?
right now, it's currently written separately, X is a foot above crown of the road.
So
And-
Daryl, is your suggestion then that the other zoning, the other flood categories, even the AE and the VE is just a foot and a half above it? I'm a little confused.
No, they have their own requirements anyhow. They're required to build different, aren't they?
Yeah, in the 100-year floodplain, you have an elevation associated with most of those zones.
Right.
And so, the Florida Building Code requires you to be a foot above whatever that elevation is.
Right, and then we added 6 inches.
Correct.
So those people over there that are in AE, they're actually in the real flood zone. They gotta build it. How high would they, what's the difference in what they would have to build versus what they're building now in the 500 year? Foot-wise, probably.
I can't really say, but
Roughly.
specifically, I mean, maybe one on the canal is in an AE 9. So if you go to a foot and a half above, that would be 10 and a half, right? And currently, the 500 year is about 13, so that's 14 and a half, so 4 feet.
Okay,
4 feet difference.
4 feet difference.
4 to 5.
Yeah, okay. Look, if I had a house on the canal, I'd build up as high as I can afford to build up. That's what I would do. But I would have the choice to do that, or, you know, they're having some issues over there now where they can't even, you know, they can't run their trunk lines and stuff because of the 500-year floodplain. And they're having problems figuring out how to get their air conditionings and their trunk lines and all that stuff under the house because to build up what they gotta build up, then they're gonna cross the amount of footage that you can build in height.
So the foot and a half only then applies to shaded edge. I'm trying to understand what happens under this proposal. If somebody walks in and says, all right, I'm in the shaded X, what's a foot and a half above the 100-year flood? What categories does that affect?
That would only affect the 100-year flood, if that's the way you write it. So if you're in shaded X, there would be nothing required for you. If you just eliminate shaded X from your floodplain ordinance,
Yeah.
it would be like
And
X.
shaded X
It'd
is
be
the
like, it would
500 year.
return to X.
Yes, so everybody, it would
Surely
be a
that's-
foot above ground.
Is that what you propose?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For context, after that FEMA call on Friday, Mario called me, told me what to call. I've already worked up a draft of how this would look, and our engineers and our team are looking at it internally now. But yes, that's what it would do. Unless we do something more creative, we could,
Yeah, we're gonna eliminate shaded X.
that's what the simple approach would do. If we just kind of revert back to what
Yeah.
mostly the model code says on these issues. If we want to do something else, we can probably accomplish that.
I've said, I mean, that's just going back to what we had.
Well, eliminates the shaded X, so the shaded X becomes X.
Yeah.
And it still has to be a foot and a half above the crown of the road.
A foot.
Is that right?
It's a foot.
And we added 6 inches, and we added 6 inches.
No.
So you-
No.
My ordinance right now
Not in the
is
X.
1 foot above
Only,
ground.
yeah, only in the, yeah, okay, not in the X.
The reason why we talk about crown of the road for X is that usually elevations are based on base flood elevations established by FEMA, but X zones, you usually don't have that. So we have a rule that's referenced relative to the road instead of base flood elevation.
Which is a good thing, and if a lot of those houses that were built years ago were a foot above the crown of the road, they wouldn't get water in their house, they wouldn't have got water in their house at Sally. Because, you know, we saw how high it went up, and it was flood, and with roughly 20 inches of rain, there's very few times it's ever gonna be that bad. As a matter of fact, I talked to Bubba Harmon said, I've been here all my life, and he said, I've never seen it flood this much.
So if you wanted to make more cautious rules for X zone, you'd probably adjust that foot above crown of the road rule, maybe go to 2 or 3 feet.
But you could leave you could leave everything like it is and just freeboard you could, to me, the very simple is freeboard the existing zoning map to meet the 100-year floodplain. Leave it, all the categories the same. Have X, have shaded X, have AE, have VE, and simply freeboard by category, just like in essence we're doing now with X, which is 1 foot above the crown of the road. If you went to shaded X at 2, if you went to AE and VE at 3, it's pretty simple. But if that's not, I mean, that's, again, that's, at some point, somebody's gonna make a motion and it's gonna include some clarification, so when we leave here, whatever it is, but that's a very simple fix, and you don't get involved in trying to alter the remaining important portions of that flood ordinance. We have to be careful about that. We have to be very careful. There's more to that about how you feel, what's allowed to be filled. I hope we don't get into just abandoning that by simply saying we're going back to the 100-year floodplain.
None of that has changed in the draft. What could change though is where those rules apply. Because if you adjusted what is considered to be a flood zone anymore, you might take that rule from applying.
That's what concerns me. That's what concerns me. Is leave the categories. As the FEMA map defines. I mean, we finally have it. It's a model. It's not anything that it's not a Bible. It's just a model that you go by. But I hope we think that there's merit to just keeping it simple for down the road and yet give us, I mean, eliminating shaded X is, I don't know, to me, that's just simply irresponsible. I just can't imagine we would do that.
Well, increasing the freeboard's doing the same thing though. You know, look, if you're trying to give the citizens the opportunity to build back something they can afford and something they can walk up the stairs into, you start adding 2 and 3 foot of freeboard to it, then you're doing the same thing with 500 doing that.
Well, 2 foot above the crown of the road is well over less than half of what the 500 year would be required now.
I don't have a problem with saying do it 1.5 foot above the crown of the road, like is what's required, and X is only required 1 foot, so if we say 1.5 foot above the crown of the road, then that takes care of everybody, because then anybody over there that's got to rebuild.
Well, no, we've got the whole city to look at, not just over there. We got the whole city that we need to look at.
I understand that.
Well, I hadn't heard much people talk about it except over there. So, I'm sorry, I don't have any, I'm just trying to find a way to come to some compromise that retains the map and the ordinance without rewriting some very, very valuable portions of that ordinance. If we aren't careful, we're gonna end up where we were on 10/9/18, and I don't want to do that. That ordinance
I don't
does
think
a lot of protection other than just 500 years versus 100 years. However, I don't think we need to continue I've expressed mine, you have, everybody has,
Well, is it,
yeah.
is it not from what I'm understanding, which I don't understand, but it's a kind of a 2-step process, in that you're gonna go back to FEMA with the 100-year and not risk our funding, or.
We don't have to go back to FEMA with 100 years.
This is helpful, just in fact, overview of the process. So the questions of FEMA are going to be about funding, but we do have to send our proposed changes to the state of Florida ahead of time. They always review it. Their goal is to make sure that we're still in compliance with their model ordinance rules. What we've done so far makes our language more similar to the model ordinance, so I think so far we'll probably have a smooth review. Because this rule is now located in Land Development Code, we'll have the Planning and Zoning Board provide recommendations, and we'll adopt an ordinance here. Some of that can be happening at the same time, but all of that has to happen at one point or another.
Well, I think from this meeting, you / Mario, that, we have to start that rolling, but we also have to understand the language, how we're gonna do this thing. I think Darryl, that's what you want to take action today to start that process.
In essence, and what were you gonna say next?
Well, the mayor's point, I think, is a good one to emphasize to make sure everyone understands it. The way the floodplain ordinance is written, many of the rules only apply within special flood zone risk areas. And some of those rules might be things you actually just want to keep, maybe even citywide, but they'll go away for the shaded X area, because the simple way to approach this is that's just no longer gonna be a special flood zone area. And I think, off the top of my head, that there's a compensatory fill rule, basically says you put a bunch of fill in, you have to remove some fill, so you'll hold some water, you won't flood your neighbors. I think that rule only applies to flood zones. So currently, under the way the structure is of your flood rules, that's most of the city. But by eliminating the shaded X as a flood zone, it becomes a much smaller portion of the city. You might still want that rule to apply, in most of the city might not, but that's the kind of consideration to think about, because small changes in the language in this ordinance can actually have bigger impacts than you expect, because it might take a rule that's fairly powerful and make it only apply to half as many places.
So there, are you opposed to freeboard and shaded X? Is that, I mean, it just sort of bare bones, is that the contention that you're?
No, like I said from the very beginning, that whatever the base flood elevation that FEMA has modeled, that we should add 1.5 feet to it. And that's what elevation you should have to build to, if you're in those areas. In the other areas.
But that, you do, that eliminates shaded X.
I agree.
I mean, okay,
Yeah.
that's not.
I don't have a problem with that, because, I think that it,
Okay.
Because look, shaded X or X, it doesn't matter. You're in the preferred rate of insurance, it doesn't change your insurance. Because you're in the preferred.
I don't disagree with that, but surely it changes the quality of our city as far as giving people a little better, I'm not about, the money is important, but giving people a sense of confidence that we're doing the best we can for them over saving them an insurance premium.
It's not
Which
just
is subjective.
about money or an insurance premium, it's about people being able to walk up their stairs and being able to walk up their stairs and get in their house.
Just look at 2 feet above the kind of the road, if you're in a shaded X area, that's not much. That's not much, as far as saving money. But anyway, how do y'all wanna proceed? You put it on here, you wanna make a motion, are we,
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we rescind the 500-year floodplain. And that we start the process of going about figuring out what if, like you said, there are other areas that you wanna consider and we wanna consider freeboard. I'd say let's get rid of the 500-year floodplain today, and let's start, and we'll open a conversation about freeboard. Is that fair enough?
Sure, I'm open for, whatever.
Because you said you weren't opposed to getting rid of the.
No, I think it's excessive, I really do, I've always thought it was excessive,
Okay.
but it was significantly better than returning to what we had. If there's a place in the middle, I'm okay with that,
I don't want to return to where we were.
Okay, well, that's good, then, I don't know if we've done anything by actually just saying we're gonna rescind it, I think, help us.
We got to go through the whole.
Well, but I think we gotta know where we're going first, we gotta be able to say, if we're gonna get rid of 500 years, here's what we do want. And if the freeboard is something to be discussed, should we just not either continue today, or, what good is just saying to rescind the 500 year? We gotta say we gotta have something.
I'm saying, we go to the 100-year floodplain that FEMA designates as the base flood elevation and add a 1.5 freeboard to it. That's where we start. And if we.
That eliminates shaded decks. That's a big deal. Surely that's a big deal. When you look at the map and you look at the volume of property that entails, surely that maybe says, wait a minute, what is that? I mean, I just want to make sure.
But you're saying it's gonna eliminate every bit of the shaded X. It's not gonna eliminate every bit of the shaded X. Because every bit of the city is not on the same elevation, though, Al. I mean,
It is
all
gonna eliminate it.
the shaded X is not level.
Of course it's not, but neither is X. I'm confused. I just want to make sure, because, I mean, you say you don't want to go back. Well, that's where we're headed. That's exactly where we're headed if we just say, rescind the 500-year and just put a 1.5 on the 100-year floodplain. Shaded X is gone.
Darryl, the way to get this clear in my mind, the area that is currently called shaded X, whether it is or is not in the future, do you want a 1.5-foot freeboard there, or do you want it to be the regular 1-foot freeboard that exists in X Center?
1.5. I want to add 6 inches to the 1-foot freeboard. So that's something we can work on and get going.
Well, we've already worked on the rules that would eliminate the 500-year floodplain. Before we send it to the state, though, we need to get all of this worked out, because they're gonna wanna review each time we make any kind of change.
So we can go ahead and say we want to rescind the 500-year floodplain, we want to use the 100-year floodplain and add a 1.5 of freeboard, and then we need to meet again to figure out, to review, to make sure everything that we send to the state meets their qualifications and classifications. Is that correct?
So the 1.5 would actually be citywide, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Even a non-shaded X?
Not an X. An X is already a foot above.
Right.
So what are you asking me?
So I guess I'm kind of confused too. I'm getting that Al thinks that even in a shaded X, we should still do a 1.5 foot.
He's saying go by the road now.
Yeah, go by the same thing that X goes by now,
Right,
except more than a foot.
except for more than a foot, right.
That's what I'm.
But that would have to be written in there, because changing it to a 100,
There is no shaded X.
yeah, shaded X would only have to go up to a foot, which is the same as a regular X.
That's right.
So I guess you have to determine, okay, shaded X still has to apply by, or you can make all of X, I guess, go 1.5 foot above the crown of the road. I don't know, but
Yeah, we either do all of X, or we figure out some way to word it so it still
shaded X still has to
references the
freeboard.
shaded X standards. We figure that out.
Couldn't you just say shaded X still has to freeboard, but not build up to
I
the
thought it would
500
be simple.
and
Shaded X
freeboard?
is at 2, AE and VE is at 3.
Well, I do have to say, I don't think adding extra to AE and VE really, I mean, they already have to build up to that base flood, and people like
Well,
Bill would
if-
still encounter,
That's covered by our building code? Then
yeah,
I'm-
covered by the bus base flood elevation.
Foot plus 100 year.
But under the, on what's AE and what's the high hazard area?
V's
I know, but what is their,
AE, VE.
what is their requirements?
the 12 to 13 feet right now.
Every place.
By building code?
By building code, it'd be a foot above 12 to 13 feet.
I'll give you.
But that's beach side, and then if you're sewer the CCCL, then you're above
Yeah,
that.
right, you're above that, but we wouldn't control that. So maybe then just shaded X. 2 feet above the crown of the road is shaded X.
Okay,
Period.
I see a couple issues here.
Talk
Daryl's
to me.
talking about eliminating the 500-year floodplain. So if you eliminate the floodplain, then it goes away. It's no longer a special flood hazard area. So then we can't do anything different with it than we do with X, because it is not its own thing anymore. It is now X.
It's not a special hazard.
Right. So you know.
It
are we
falls back
talking
into
about-
its category.
Are we talking about elevation of the 500 year, or are we talking about the area of the 500 year?
The elevation of the
So when
property.
you say eliminate 500 year floodplain, you mean elevation?
Yes, I don't want people to have to build up, depending on where they are in the city, from 2.5 to 6 feet. When
So-
they're,
So are we keeping the 500 year floodplain as a special flood hazard area?
no,
Yes.
Let's reword that. Are we keeping shaded X as a category?
Yeah, I thought we were just gonna strike.
yeah, no,
Okay.
stripe shaded X.
So it no, okay, so it would no longer exist in this scenario.
And then say crown of the road for any place over there as our ordinance, crown of the road plus 1.5 feet.
Okay.
And that's easy, and then everybody over there builds up higher than what this guy over here won't get flooded unless we get 40 inches of rain instead of 20 inches of rain. And I don't know what you do about that unless you stop Gulf County's water from dumping out on us and coming right through the middle of our city. I don't know what you do about that.
I was just gonna, I wanted to give you a quick scenario of a lot that I just purchased.
Okay?
So the lot is in an AE 9, it was an 8, it's in a 9, that doesn't matter. 1.5 above that, it's gotta be a 10.5. The road, I have elevation shots where the road is at that spot is at 6.
Okay?
So in that scenario, you know, I use AE, or I use the 100-year flood plus the freeboard. So automatically gotta be 4.5 feet above the road.
Okay?
So I'm just letting y'all know that.
So, and that's where you're essentially.
So that would, you couldn't put in the flood zones, AE and all those others, you couldn't just put in above crown of the road because you have to use base flood. So that already puts me 4.5 feet. And I will say on that particular property, we plan on building, we're probably gonna go higher, just because.
Where it's at.
But at the shaded X on that same property, it puts me at 15.5, which is another 5 feet above the 10, puts me at.
So if we do.
5 foot, but I still have to be, no matter what, if we strike the shaded X on that property, I have to be, I'm approximately 4.5 feet above the crown of the road.
Right, okay.
Just following the.
Because it has a base flood elevation already that FEMA has set.
Yeah, our rule already excludes the areas that are based on baseline elevation stuff. This is, I'm looking at right now. It's areas outside the special flood hazard area.
Okay. So if we say, do away with the 500-year floodplain and you have to build 1.5 feet above the crown of the road, it won't affect what they're doing. How does it affect you, Jason?
I'd still be higher than the crown.
Okay,
So
so,
apply the more strict rule.
yeah, so, okay, so then we wouldn't have an issue with saying that, right?
We can make.
On that property. On that one property.
On that property, the crown of the road rule didn't apply.
Yes.
Because it's
Right.
already in a
Right.
special.
It's already in a special flood.
But in most of the town back here, it does affect, because, you know, most of the houses back here aren't built up 1.5 feet above the ground now.
When you say back here, specifically where is back here?
Really, you know, if you look at the city, you got 2 triangles essentially. That second, most of that second triangle. Using 98 as one of the, you know, the city goes out and goes back, and then it goes out again and goes back. Most of that section over there.
So you're talking about the east side of town?
Yes, ma'am. I'm losing track of why it's a difficult thing to comprehend. I mean, Nick is saying, and what you guys just said, we can do away with the 500-year flood plain and put everything to the new, or to the floodplain, whatever it is, that FEMA designated as the model, and add 1.5 feet freeboard to it, and then we're good. We've given them the extra safety, we've done as a city, we've added 6 inches, state added a foot, right? Is that, Christine, is that what you're saying?
I'm
The way
I mean, I'm not there to make the
Yeah.
rules, I just, you know.
So this proposal, in my mind, it does away with the shaded X altogether.
Yep.
And there'll be more properties than regular X, and those would be 18 inches above the ground road instead of 12.
Correct.
Why would we take what's already X and add to that? Why would you do that? Why would you make that high?
Because a lot of the places that are around,
They didn't flood. X doesn't flood. It doesn't have any true X.
shaded X does, no, but shaded X
You
does
do away
now.
with that.
But it's going back to X, so that means, yeah, some of that X stuff does flood.
It does when you change it, but you're adding 6 inches additional to what you didn't,
What is-
you don't need to.
If I'm rebuilding a house today in X, I go a foot above the crown of the road. In your scenario, I go a foot and a half.
I'm fine with going a foot if everybody thinks a foot's fine. If that's what everybody thinks is the best thing, instead of adding 6 inches, I'm good with that. I just wanna get rid of the 500-year floodplain because people are building way up too high. You know, those little, everybody calls them the little houses, which, you know, I don't know that they're actually little. You know, all of those are gonna look like anthills, and you can't put but a foot of dirt on a lot, so you got a whole community of anthills over there. My guy's across the street's gonna be a bigger anthill. You know, and there's no reason for him to do that, because he's not in an area where he's gonna have to worry about flooding. That's about as bad as it gets right there. And for him to be a foot and a half, either one, above the crown of the road, he would be above the water by a foot and a half essentially.
I just hate to see us eliminate shaded X because it has value way beyond Maryland,
But
Georgia, east end of town.
When did it become called shaded X?
After the storm.
After the storm.
After the storm.
Who called it shaded X?
The FEMA calls it shaded.
FEMA calls
It's
it
a 500-year floodplain. The city adopted, but
Oh, okay.
FEMA calls it the 500.
Okay, so FEMA called it the 500-year floodplain, and we adopted that 500-year floodplain.
Correct.
We
Okay,
adopted it to be part of our special fund.
which was how much above what we used to have?
Are we talking elevation or are we talking
Elevation,
area?
elevation.
No,
I don't know, because it was a whole different map. It was a whole different map.
Nick, you have any idea what to do?
I understand what Daryl's proposing. We can draw that up.
Or is it the consensus that that we want to get rid of the shaded X and just return to the 100-year? And then we can, Jerry, is that what you want to do? You want to get rid of the shaded X?
I want to just go back to the 100 year, and I know you not open to get out of the 500 and go back to the 100.
But you realize that will
I
eliminate
understand.
shaded X?
I promise you I understand.
Okay.
You made
Jerry,
that
you
clear
good
to
with that?
me and Darryl, but I still want to. I mean, I know how you feel about it.
Okay, look, how I feel is,
I understand,
I've
that's
had
why
my
I'm-
opportunity, I've
Yeah.
done what I can do.
Well, my discussion is, and I hope we vote on something, because, instead of what you do, and Nick, well, tell us what we're gonna wait till next week or something, and go ahead and get started.
Well, we've got most of this prepared, we're just troubleshooting some of the details to make sure we said it correctly in our language we've worked on. The part that is new, that is not hard to add, is if we are going to increase the elevation from the crown of the road 6 additional inches, instead of 1 foot, make it 1.5 foot. That's not difficult to do, but we haven't done it.
I like doing that, I like adding a little bit, because according to what Dina said, depending on what FEMA gave you, there's a little bit of slough in it, so that's the reason that we said, let's give it an extra 6 inches, so we're covered.
Well, maybe we go back to like the mayor was, you're dabbling in the regular X.
You're-
I would leave the X at a foot above crown of the road, why change it?
Yep,
If you
okay.
wanna do something shaded, by all means.
Freeboard in the shaded X. I mean, wouldn't you just put?
Just, but use the crown of the road,
Not that 500-year.
elevation.
The point
What you just said is what I'm trying to make
I
happen.
think that's what he's
I
trying
think,
to say.
I think that's what the
You catch
mayor
what
was
they
trying
said?
to say.
Yes, still.
Only
call out the
freeboard.
shade- Find a way to word it so we still can rely on the shaded decks area for establishing the freeboard from the crown road. I'm sure it can be done. We'll have to spend a whole time figuring out how to do it, but I understand what you want. If that's your goal.
But not have to build to that post-hurricane 0.2% that's
Plus
on that,
freeboard.
plus freeboard that's
Right.
on that map.
It would still remain a category, but not for elevation purposes. It'd be a category.
Category,
of
yes.
a higher
That
freeboard.
makes, to me, that's simple.
Let's make that happen.
We still want to be a category for special flood zone hazard area, so that some of these other.
Now, if it's covered,
Just for
I don't see any reason why we would do anything different. Gina, is there any reason why you would do anything different in the AE and the BE zones? Just leave it just like it is.
No, but the shaded X, does it stay a special flood hazard area or not? I
I'm
think that's a
hoping.
huge-
That was my question, because that covers another half dozen issues that are not just elevation.
Correct.
The distinction of whether it's special flood hazard area or not is really the trigger for several rules, whether they apply or not.
Which are what rules?
Well, the example that really is clear in my head is the compensatory fill rule, which has to do with, creating some water storage on your property. If you're gonna put a lot of fill on your property, and it's designed to keep you from raising up your property several feet next to your neighbor and flooding your neighbor. I know that rule only applies in special flood zone, special flood hazard areas. I know there's gonna be some other rules like that.
Well, I don't see if everybody's going a foot or a foot and a half above the crown of the road, because they put a foot of dirt on there anyhow. Okay, so you're not gonna change that, so they can only put a foot, even if they wanted to build up 4 feet, they can still only put a foot of dirt in those special flood hazard area.
Yeah, but they have to basically dig themselves a pond to do it.
If they go above a foot.
I think so.
But you
Right.
have to keep them in the special flood hazard area. If
Yeah.
you eliminate shaded X, that rule goes away.
Okay,
So that's the question. Do you keep the shaded X as an area, not elevation, area? To
okay,
keep these rules in place.
yep, okay, I agree with that. I think to keep those kinds of rules that are in place, what other rules are there explicitly?
Goes through.
You know off the top of your head, Jim?
The increased cost of compliance coverage that Bobby was talking about, that would still apply to those people. They would still be able to get money to elevate.
Okay, that's a good thing.
Yep.
Don't have a problem with that.
But if if shaded X is eliminated, then that goes away for them.
Okay,
Um,
so we could keep it as an area, make them build up above the crown of the road, which is what, all I'm trying to do is,
Make them freeboard.
huh?
Just make them freeboard.
Make them freeboard above the crown of the road, so, and that's, so what else is there? Anything else that you can think of, Gina?
That's the only thing I can think of right now. There are several rules written in that floodplain ordinance that's 33 pages long, so, but those are the two main ones that I deal with often.
Right. So, rescind the 500-year floodplain elevation. Keep the special flood hazard shaded X designation. Keep the rules that apply to that special flood hazard area. And the new regulation is if you're in any of those areas over there in the shaded X, you go up a foot above the road or a foot and a half, we could make it a foot and a half. But you know, I'm fine with a foot if it's above the road, but I think a foot and a half would be better. We're adding 6 inches because of what Dina said, differences in conflicts in elevation, so I'd say a foot and a half above crown of the road. Is that what you're thinking, Christine?
I mean, that would be the freeboard.
Yeah, that would be the
Foot and a half.
freeboard, right, okay.
It's just that post-elevation thing that, really messed everything up.
Yeah, right. Okay, so are you clear on what we're talking about there?
Yes, I'm going through the floodplain ordinance right now, and just at a very baseline level, you only even make application to the floodplain administrator if you're in a special hazard area. So, what does that application look like? It looks a whole lot like a building permit application, so it's not a huge difference, but by keeping the category, you leave intact the majority, make most of what's in the floodplain ordinance. By eliminating the category, there will be procedural things that are lost for sure, and probably some other stuff that I'll just have to focus on there.
But people are not gonna have to build up 4 feet above the road to meet an elevation.
You're saying keep the shaded X category, but measure the elevation.
Just
based
freeboard
on-
above the road.
Yeah.
Just like X. Just like X is now.
Right.
It's clear, there's never been any, there's no one in this city, everyone understands. If you're in the X, you get an elevation shot, you're a foot above the road, whatever that is. It just can't be any more simple than that.
I'm in agreement with that.
And like Christina said, and many others, get away from that .02, trying to be a math major and understand if you're here, you're really not here, you gotta subtract. Do away with all that. Just come up with a simple shaded X. I said 2.5, I'll go to 2. If Daryl's saying 1.5 feet, maybe we can go to 2, I don't know. But anyway, that may be another discussion.
Can I get a 2.5?
So, yeah, how many got on 2.5? Anyway, Nick, you got us headed the right way. I don't think we need a vote, do we? Have any consensus that we're doing away with 500 years?
You'll have plenty of votes later.
Oh, I know that, but I'm talking about to give us,
The 1.5 is the only thing I'm unclear on that. 1.5, right? Not 2, 1.5. And the shaded X area, we're gonna.
shaded X, how about 2?
1.5.
1.5.
Bobby?
Because we already added 6.
Still put it in half.
Lower
your hands up, Bobby.
Who's gonna bring the
Get on
pizza?
through with it.
Who's bringing the pizza?
That's right.
All right, let's go.
That's
All right, we got a
But we
1.5.
don't need to vote on it.
Sharon, what do you,
So Nick, eventually, ultimately, all we're doing is getting rid of the elevation part,
that's all.
language.
That's
We're
exactly
changing
it.
it. We're just going.
And it salvages all that other stuff in that order.
It's pretty clean.
Okay,
But we don't need to vote on it.
You're welcome to. But we've got direction, so we'll make.
he's gonna go back and listen to the tape.
I'm gonna make a motion, we vote to do what we just discussed, changing it to a freeboard issue, keeping it as a special area, but doing away with the elevation part of it, and that's what I make a motion that we do here today.
18 inches above the ground, right?
18 inches.
Shaded it.
In shaded X. Everything else applies to like the DEA, VE, and element OP.
Sharon, did I hear you? say
Yes, I
something?
did say.
Thank you. Motion to second to do what we said we were gonna do. You got it? You're gonna need a bigger pad than that, huh?
Yes,
Okay,
I got it.
is there any, no, call the roll.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes,
Ms. Call?
Yes.
Mr. Keith?
Yes.
Mr. Fulop?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Amen.
well, there's other votes coming up, so I'm still got a chance.
Yeah, you got a chance.
Let's move on.
Let's move
You
on.
got it?
Yeah, are we
Good.
Are we done?
Yeah.
I'm going.
Yeah, we got it. Move over on to,
City attorney.
city attorney.
I do not have anything.
Thank you.
All right. Financial, I think, basically, we got the 29th public hearing for the budget, 6 o'clock.
You missed one department report.
I'll move it to the financial report. Other than that, there is no financial report.
The 29th.
The 29th at 6 o'clock
Yes.
I'm just making that as an announcement under the
Here.
financial report.
Sharon, I got it.
29, 6 o'clock, Central.
Laura, do you have is there anything to add to that, to the financial? Other than, okay. You got anything? Fire chief?
The only thing that's happened since the last time I met was, as you're all well aware, we did get some money from the state for last year. We have not spent all of it, and we would have had to have given it back at the end of this month had we not done so. We have got an extension for 6 months, so that we can continue doing the improvements for the within Public Works and Fire Department area now that we haven't got done already. So that's basically, everything else is as normal.
My two are upstairs, aren't we through upstairs?
Pardon me?
Aren't we through upstairs?
There's a few little issues with things like condensation in regards to AC, which is being dealt with.
Okay.
And that's those funds that I'm still trying to use for doing things like that, which we're allowed to do. There's other things that's happening in the Public Works yard in the way of pole barns we're going to put up, because we took some of their covered area for their machinery. We're going to put a pole barn, that type of thing. We have the funds for that. I just have to go and apply for an extension. We've got that extension.
You staying with us? You got anything? Come on, man.
Come on, please say something.
I ain't getting involved in this.
You need to go home. Let's move.
Kathy?
I'm with him.
On code, I do have, what's the latest, because I get asked multiple times about the Grove. What, I can't think of Daniel's last name, but, or his LLC, the Grove property, what's the latest on that?
Oh, I spoke to, Jared.
That's Daniel's wife.
Yeah. He's coming down, probably in about a week or so. They've already removed the boat, and they're gonna clean the property up, remove all that aluminum.
Okay.
Plus, that's all gonna come off, and he should be coming in pretty soon, from what she told me last week.
Okay, so that's in the works, here it comes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tommy, any questions for code? Okay. Tommy, you're up.
Mayor, I just want to say thank you to all public work employees. Tuesday and Wednesday, they worked in the rain, the wind, helping sandbag people's houses, pumping water from one ditch to another ditch to keep people's houses from flooding out. And we done all that without any injuries. And I just want to say thank you to all the people that worked really hard in some really adverse conditions.
I agree.
I gave y'all a copy of all the stuff that we've done during a couple of weeks here.
In a little weather like that, test our employees, and they did a great job, all of them.
came good.
Kevin, what about you? Do you have any, or is that,
Doing good, about the same concept, utilities, working hard, bypassing stations and, everything.
and MX1, anything to report on MX1?
It's functioning right now. It's working.
How many pumps?
Two.
Two out of four.
We're gonna pull the other one and get it.
Two out of three.
2 out of 3.
And
All right, any questions for sewer or water or sanitation?
sewer, where did we have the breakup now?
Okay, Dewberry, Ariel. I like the way Josh attends, but stays in the back of the room. He
He's nice to color too.
Thank you.
Okay, the municipal complex, DAG is, as of, yesterday, still working on the layout for the police, fire, and civic center. It's working with Mario and trying to do some programming on what the buildings need to be like. As far as the marina goes, we were told that FEMA is obligated the project. We reached out to our contractor, and they've agreed to hold the price that they've given us. We're just waiting on notice to proceed.
As far as that got on that project, what did we take out of that? Anything other than the restroom?
At this point, the restrooms are, we're still trying to figure out how, if at all possible, to get the restrooms built.
So we haven't taken them out?
We have not taken them out.
Okay, does this include the wall, that piece of the wall from the Parker Bridge to the?
It does not, but again, if the monies work out, we might be able to have enough monies to do that little section.
Sunset Park, the design team has been working with Mario to come up with a conceptual plan that we can put on CAD and present to you guys for a final review. And I think as of yesterday, we have that, so it's in CAD right now. Sometime next week, Mario should have the final.
We'll have something to look at.
Yes, sir. the citywide streets, at our last meeting, we asked if you guys could take a look at where we were proposing to do the repairs and give us some feedback so we can proceed with bidding.
Jared, you do that?
The little stretch I wanted about like this, they ain't gonna do. So.
I looked at that, I don't know how to make, I don't know how to make a suggestion of that. I mean, it is.
A deck of cards, I mean, you
Yeah,
can.
okay.
What I want, they don't, you know, they don't want to come in there with
Well,
a,
call your police friends.
and what are they gonna
They
do?
can go down and talk to them.
Oh, I do that.
It's not code enforcement take care of it.
You will too.
I looked at that, and, you know, I tend to agree with what you guys came up and said, you know, it's better, because you go down the edge of the road, and we're wasting a whole lot of asphalt there, where we really, because we can do edge of the road a lot cheaper than we can repave and resurface roads from an asphalt standpoint, so for my particular thoughts, I think that I agree with the way you changed it and did stretches in areas. That's the way I feel about it. I like that better. I think you made an improvement on what they agreed to do for us.
But I would like to say that Fifth and Seventh Street is the two most heavily trafficked roads in Mexico Beach. And they not on it, I don't think none of it, so, but there's a couple of places, but they can't.
How does that work I didn't even look at the bid, speaking of those streets, on the Oleander water line, where all those roads are cut? Is that just a patch
It's
later on?
intersection crossings, it's intersection crossings there, I mean, it's basically the stretch all the
But
way.
in the bid for the water line, is the patch the road back part of that? Okay. I figured it was, I just thought of that.
Can you call the man and tell him that about once a week to go down there with a shovel? Or leave me some, I done got a little track down there one time and filled up 7th Street. It's a good speed bump. I mean, the policeman had to worry about speeding down there. Can you get him to do 5th and 7th? Cause it just beats the, or either give me your number of your tire repair man and I'll pass it out. Thank you, y'all.
Something that we need to keep in mind while we're talking about these larger streets, these thoroughfares, DOT does offer city stop program. So, you know, that could potentially be one city street per year, one major thoroughfare that we could be applying for DOT funds to get city stop funds. We do that in a lot of municipalities, so that's something.
We sure need to get on
That
that
fund
list.
cycle comes, we can prepare that application, but we can start going after some of these larger streets, like your 15th Street, your 5th Street, your 7th Street. Some of these longer streets, we can use DOT money for resurfacing on these streets.
So how do we get that started?
Application cycle comes available, I'll let everybody know.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh.
Citywide sidewalks and parking, I expect to have a set of plans for the city to review next week. For stormwater, I have given AC Disaster Dina the list of the pipe material that we've identified that needs to get replaced, but now we've got to go through the task of going through each one of those locations and determining what other material is going to have to get replaced to get the pipe to the ground, these driveways or roads or sidewalks. We're actively working on that. Oleander is under construction. The jetty project is in design. I believe we have a meeting, 1st of October. And once we have, our basic design laid out, we expect to meet with the city to review and any comments. Dedicated beach landscaping, this is the schedule that was given to kind of get this project back on track. This is kind of through the month of October. It brings us all the way up to, sending it out to bid on October 28th.
When are we gonna see the preliminary plan?
We'll have, October 1st, 60% construction.
Those 60% plans will be sufficient for the city review.
Next week.
60%.
At 60%, all the basic work is done, it's just not the detail has been done. So you'll be able to see what they're proposing.
What does 60% mean? That's what I'm confused about that.
At 60%, everything that's gonna be done is shown, just not the detail worked out. So you'll be able to see what they're proposing to build.
But not what they're maybe proposing to plant?
No, the full
It'll
scope.
give you everything. It won't say you're gonna irrigate it with ABC and you're gonna fertilize it with CE.
Yeah.
It's not gonna give you the detail. It's gonna show you everything that's gonna be planted, where it's gonna be planted, the density it's gonna be planted from point A to point B. It'll give you enough for you all to look at and.
And if we have a problem, then we can say before 20th, let's do this. Okay.
Right, I mean, what you guys will be reviewing is the plan view itself and the planning schedule more than likely, and that should be included in the 60%.
Okay. In other words, on the roads, you were given 20%, you were able to review that and comment on that. You're gonna get even more than that to review and comment on that.
All right, the canal dredging, surveys we gave AC disaster, no update on that from last week or last meeting. And then Josh, and I'll talk a little bit about the FERDAP program for the 7th Street Park.
I'll make it real quick. So we had a special meeting for FERDAP this morning. I'm assuming everybody is familiar with that Florida Recreation Development Systems program. Basically focused on parks throughout municipalities. The program in short, 0 to 50,000 is 100% funded by DEP. 50 to 150 is a 75-25 match, with 75% from DEP and 25 from the municipality, and then anything above the 150 is a 50-50 match. The part that we're going to apply for funds, we spoke tomorrow, we had a meeting about it. The meeting this morning was just a formality. They have a point system, and by having a special advertised meeting for public input, you get points for that. So we're looking at the Hundreds of Palms Park on 7th Street. And what we talked about, as far as FEMA coverage on that, FEMA replaced the mulching within the playground there, and the playground equipment is intact, and they're also going to complete rebuilding of the restroom. They also had 1,172 linear foot of trail to repair. That's part of FEMA, so whatever we do can overlap with FEMA. So what's been proposed in short so far is that we do like basic exercise equipment along the trail, whether it be, pull-up bars, that type of thing. They have a lot of trails that are doing this now, like states strategically throughout the trail having equipment to stop and exercise on. Also looking at some picnic tables and some type of landscaping with some faster growing trees for people to be able to sit out. Picnicking is a big points grabber as far as this system goes. And I think that would be considered support facility. So, main things are the equipment throughout, the picnic facilities, some landscaping, and keeping it in the $0 to $50,000 range where it's 100% funded by DEP, which is, in this area, our experience has been that most of the projects they fund are in that 0 to 50,000. They don't really, unless you're very South Florida, they don't fund much above that $50,000 range.
And the bathrooms was in them too, Josh?
Bathrooms were included as part of the FEMA reimbursable, so we can't touch that as far as request for funds.
Tommy, did you get my whole fix? Over it? Not yet, but we was okay. Been in the meeting most of the morning, me too. Tommy. I got a complaint, officer.
You got any more questions?
Hell no. I bet y'all ain't saying that.
I had one, maybe before we get to you on the dredging. Have we quantified the amount of work yet to be done, and has that been sent to FEMA?
I know that one of the things that came up when we said dredging was I got a text from Dina saying, can you call me right afterwards? So there is a quantity. That quantity is consistent with what Dina had proposed, so.
But has it been sent to me?
It has not been sent, but my understanding is it's ready to be sent.
Does anybody here can speak to that? Is it ready to be sent? I mean, I'm.
The data we provided that we discussed with you in the meeting was.
Well, that was
what we had. So
right, that was 2
it
weeks
was-
ago.
It's as far ready as we can provide.
So, Mark, what are we waiting on? A letter? What? I mean,
Agreed. We will send,
okay, I mean, that's, after having a root canal without Novocaine, I'm ready to send it to them, I'm telling you. I mean, it's been, if we've got the data, and all we have to do is send the letter, I mean, I'll write the letter, I know, but we gotta do that. Okay. All right, you're up.
Mayor, again, I'd like to commend staff and everyone, and including council, for being out and notifying us on issues that they saw, and getting out on the street when it was raining and it was blowing. Everybody, police, fire, parks and rec, street, storm, water, sewer, everybody got out and did things, and legal helped us with our issues there. We did reach out to Bay County, we reached out to Panama City Beach. They offered us help and actually sent people over here during the storm to help us out on MX1 and to help us, with notifications and things like that. So again, kudos to staff and everyone else that helped go through the storm. We did have some damage to the beach. We had some areas that where the sand fencing basically washed away. We had some of the dune wash away. Those are some of the things that maybe this declaration will allow us to go back and deal with some things. We noticed that we had issues with sewer and storm, so it will allow us to do some patchwork and or fix and or cover the cost for the bypass pumps and the pumps and things like that we had in overtime. So again, thank you to everyone for helping us go through that.
And we can coincide putting that, if we get funding, to put beach sand back, just prior to them planning and doing whatever they're gonna do for the beach beautification.
Certainly, the beach beautification component.
No sense to waste that sand and get another storm.
Yeah, is north of the dunes, where we lost sand was mainly
Right
south.
on the road, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Is that all?
That is all.
Motion for adjournment?
Please.
So moved.
Thank everyone for coming.
Be tough.